FM and AM 950, The Fan, Rochester.
Always live on the free Odyssey app.
Neat or on the rocks? It's the Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia on the Sports Leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950 The Fan, Rochester.
Not knocking the camera over today, but I like that.
I want to get off to a good start this afternoon here in the Sports Bar. Don't poke the bear. Welcome on in. It's a great Thursday afternoon in the Flower City, and we're set for 3 hours of fantastic sports talk. We appreciate you joining us here in the Sports Bar. It's Danger and Battaglia. We'll get to some news and notes from today's Bills practice as they prepare for week 2 of the preseason, a game on Saturday night in Pittsburgh. But let's face it, there's a lot going on in the world of sport. Maybe you're a fantasy football player and you've got that on your mind. I'm raising my hand, guilty. Right now, I'm starting to really think more and more about fantasy football this upcoming season. So we'll talk some fantasy football later on this afternoon. Tony Cotillo, Win Daily Sports, he's going to join us. He's our fantasy Goomba. He's going to join us. Hey, Tony. Tony's the guy you want in your fantasy football league. Hey, Tony.
I feel like we should ask him, too, like in his headshot on the website formerly known as Twitter. It's him, but he's showing a ring. But it's like, okay, it's the type of ring that you would win if you won a sports championship. Is that like a fantasy championship he won, or was he part of some team that won a ring or something like that? It's not a wedding band ring.
It is, yeah. It looks like one of those like a national fantasy football championship ring, something big and bulky and obnoxious. But love that Tony's joining us to dispel any myths that we have going into this fantasy football draft season. We'll have a good fantasy football conversation with Tony coming up here right around 4:25 this afternoon. And later this hour, hey, we've got some football tonight.
We do. We have the Eagles and the Browns. And, hey, these two stories, you could say they kind of connect here, because the Cleveland Browns, you might not be a Browns fan. If you are, you're going to love this. But what's going on with Deshaun Watson? I mean, which Watson is going to show up? The guy who was last year, or the guy we remember from Houston in 2019? Or does it not even matter in Cleveland? We'll talk to our buddy. I love when we talk to guys that are from the 5A5 that go out, hit other markets. Spencer German returning for the first time in a while in the Sports Bar. You can hear him on Odyssey Sister Station 92.3 The Fan weeknights, but not tonight. They got a Browns game. Browns-Eagles tonight.
Yeah, Spencer's a good dude. Love that we're going to have him on with us. He'll be joining us here later on this hour, probably right around 3:25 or so. You can join us on the Good Smoke Barbecue and Pub Wingman line. That number is 866-4FAN, award-winning barbecue from Good Smoke Barbecue and Pub in the new location, 135 West Commercial Street in East Rochester, goodsmokebbq.com. You mentioned the website formerly known as Twitter, X. You can reach out to us there and engage at The Fan Rochester, at AKA Mike Danger, or at Gene Battaglia. And if you're listening locally and you're moving around or you're mobile, you want to find all these different platforms that we're on, of course, you can hear us on 95.7 FM and AM 950, but you can find The Fan Rochester on Twitch, also on YouTube, and we sound our best in the free-to-download Odyssey app or on your smart device when you ask it to play 95.7 The Fan.
Yeah, special hello to our latest follower on Twitch, Squidward.
Oh, Squidward. Yeah.
Squidward.
He had some takes, though.
Yeah,
I think Squidward was agreeing with us yesterday when we were talking about how we weren't high on the Browns offense. We weren't high on Deshaun Watson, and I think he said Watson's going to have a bust of a season.
Yeah.
When we get to our usual fare here this afternoon, including I'll drink to that later this hour, some takes on tap, there is a team that I think has the potential to be the most disappointing. I'm going to tell you who I think will be the most disappointing team in 2023. Expectations are high, and I'm going to tell you why they're going to fall well short of those expectations.
When I'm picking one of these games later on, and I'll drink to that, it's going to be a test. Like, is my take standing on its own, or is Mike Danger going to say, that's my influence rubbing off on you, Gene?
Okay. All right. We'll get to that here with I'll Drink to That, our little take space coming up here before 4 o'clock. Of course, we've got our NFL whip around. We'll serve up some NFL appetizers, get you caught up on everything happening around the league. A round of shots coming up during happy hour after 5 o'clock. The table is set.
So not only has Andy Isabella been seen this week receiving passes from Josh Allen with I mean, he's with the ones. I don't know, just kind of like warm-ups, but didn't see Isabella getting passes from number 17 while the team was at Fisher. Normally, the Bills won't put out there somebody at the podium that they're going to cut in 2 weeks. Or maybe. Are we to read anything into it that Andy Isabella speaking with reporters in a press conference setting today?
You come in here and you set a standard for yourself. I set a high standard for myself. And I kind of try to carry that standard with me every day, whether it's staying after and studying more the plays. When I go out there, I know what I'm doing. And I bring a lot of energy and play hard. And I think when you do that, the ball finds energy and the ball finds people that work hard and do the right thing. So,
Coach Sean McDermott just swooning. Oh, he's saying all the right things. Sean McDermott did speak earlier today. Not only did he tell us how much he expects his starters to play come Saturday, he did mention that wide receiver competition, specifically playing with confidence, what it means for Khalil Shakir and Andy Isabella in that competition.
Can you carry your confidence through the course of a season? That's a trait, that's a mental skill, and I think Khalil is one of our more confident players, and we're confident in him, and I know Josh is as well, and I don't see that becoming an issue for him, but it is something that is a challenge for performers, especially in this type of environment.
Do you think Khalil Shakir corrected Sean McDermott after he said his name is Khalil? There's something interesting happening there, and you could put Andy Isabella on the practice squad. He's probably okay. If you could do that, then why couldn't you put Khalil Shakir on the practice squad as well and think he's probably going to be okay? It feels like they've got something invested in Shakir, and they'd be giving that up by putting him on the practice squad. But boy, it seems like there is something between Shakir and Isabella in terms of how they've performed so far this preseason. It's become, to me, the most fascinating camp battle that's left to be determined.
Well, how about we frame it this way? If the Bills didn't do an oopsie with their practice squad last year, meaning Isaiah Hodgins, who's the best of the three? It would be Hodgins, right? Today. I'm just talking today.
It's weird. I want to agree with that, but for whatever reason, he couldn't get on the field with the Bills. He got on the field with a team that needed him more and utilized him, played to his strengths in the Giants. Like Brian Daboll, an offensive-minded guy, probably knew Hodgins had some skills more so than what Sean McDermott did while he was here in Buffalo, right? Like, they like their guys.
But Hodgins balled out at camp. He was a contributor on special teams during the preseason last year, made a tackle on the count, and okay, this is somebody they will keep as the 5th or 6th receiver. All right, they think they can get away with it on the practice squad. Nope, pluck, took him right off. That's what could happen with Shakir. I would state that, look, Isabella brings you this speed, and that's exciting, and I certainly would want him on the team, but Shakir has more upside. Shakir could develop. It's too soon to tell. He's only through one full season and kind of a meh camp so far. You're not ready to give up, and practice squad is sort of kind of giving up when you can kind of expose them to the rest of the league.
I just wonder, and maybe somebody who scouts these players more than we do, Gene, can tell us about the fall of Andy Isabella, because I remember him being drafted by the Cardinals, and I remember him having blazing speed before he got drafted. That was an intriguing player in that offense. So where has it gone wrong for Andy Isabella as a pro? And why does it seem to be clicking all of a sudden here in Buffalo? Is it just that this offense is so that this offense and the people in this offense, separation is so key, and you've got a speed guy in Isabella and a quick guy in Isabella who can get that separation, maybe even more so than a guy like Shakir can? I think it's fascinating. It's something that we'll be watching out for, and especially on Saturday night when we found out today that Josh Allen and the starters on offense probably be in the lineup for about a quarter and a half. So I'd be shocked if we didn't see some reps from Isabella with the first team, just to see how does he look out there with, you'll see Hardy, you'll see Sherfield. I think you'll see all of the weapons out there at some point with the first team, if we're planning on seeing them for as much as a quarter and a half.
Can we agree the Bills are not keeping 7 wide receivers on this team?
I think it's 6. Yeah. I agree. I think it's 6. And if you look at the how it stacks up, it's hard to imagine Andy Isabella being one of those 6. He would have to emerge over a Justin Shorter, who they just drafted and has amazing size. 2 guys that they've invested in Sherfield and Hardy, and Shakir, who they invested all last season in. So everybody's been saying Isabella's practice squad. I believe Andy Isabella is probably going to end up on the Buffalo Bills practice squad. But it's comforting to know that he could step up and even be maybe more productive than the guy that beats him out at the end of the preseason.
Well, and why I think he's practice squad, just history and how other GMs may view him in this league. He sat essentially on the Ravens practice squad all last year.
Yeah.
And when you think about the finger quote talent that the Buffalo Bills put at the wide receiver, you were down to John Brown and Cole Beasley at that point. So why did actually Brandon Beane and his staff say, no, we're not going to bring in Andy Isabella for a look here. We're just going to go with somebody that Josh trusts. He trusts John Brown. He trusts Cole Beasley. Yeah. They weren't ready to go down that road. And the Ravens, they didn't actually cut him until the day before the Bills opened up training camp this year. So Andy Isabella could have been out there for the taking. If the Bills really like Andy Isabella, then I would not expect him to see him play against the Bears. That'll be the tell. Like if he's not out there for the final preseason game, then maybe the Bills are thinking of, my gosh, they'll carry 7. I think he's perfect danger for this reason. When you get an injury to Hardy or anybody else for a speed guy, that's the guy you call up.
Yeah, and he's got more of that than anybody else that the Bills have it in the preseason, on the preseason roster. I mean, we'll see Marcel Aitman and Keyshawn Johnson and Desmond Patman making plays through the course of the preseason, and that's all fine and good. They're all guys that, probably are going to be looking for work here in a couple of weeks, where Andy Isabella is actually somebody you would want to keep handy for you there on that practice squad in the event of an injury to a Deontay Hardy or a Khalil Shakir. Interesting how it worked out, and you essentially got him for nothing. I mean, like, he was just out there, and you brought him in at the last minute, almost out of necessity at training camp. So
he was in his second year in Arizona. He was inactive for half the season.
Yeah,
that's weird.
What I'm trying to figure out is, like, what was it? Was it a disagreement with coach? Was it a disagreement with quarterback? Is it an attitude thing? What is it?
Did he defeat Kyler Murray in a video game? What was it?
Yeah, I don't know, but it seems to be going well for him here, and we'll kind of keep monitoring that here through the rest of the preseason as we get closer to week 1. Against the Jets on that Monday night. By the way, the Steelers will also kind of deploy a similar strategy as Sean McDermott announced he would do, with the first teamers getting more play here in the week 2 of the preseason. This feels like it'd be more closer to that dress rehearsal that we always used to see in a 4-week preseason, right? Week 3 was always the dress rehearsal. Week 2, I think, is the new week 3, and that, Kenny Pickett and his starting offense for Pittsburgh will play more than just the one series that they played last week. And Pickett was impressive in that one series. 6 for 7, 70 yards, and a 33-yard touchdown to George Pickens on a 10-play touchdown drive, the only action that they got week 1 against the Buccaneers. So Bills, Steelers coming up Saturday night, a game you'll be able to hear on the Fan Rochester. Looking forward to week 2 of the preseason.
Yeah. Get-in price is $34. I thought it'd be cheaper for that. Like when you go to a Bills, like that's a game you could drive to, right? I don't know if you want to drive back that night, but
4 hours here to Pittsburgh.
Yeah,
about 4 hours.
Yeah, about 4 hours.
It's kind of the same as driving to Cleveland. Different direction. You go south instead.
3.5, 4. You could probably do it in.
Not bad. We'll be chatting with Tony Cotillo, Win Daily Sports. He'll be our guest, talk some fantasy football here coming up in the 4 o'clock hour. We're about 10, 15 minutes away from a conversation with Spencer German at 92.3 The Fan in Cleveland. Spencer preparing for a Browns preseason game tonight as Cleveland takes on Philadelphia, and lots of questions around the Browns heading into this season. It feels as if the Browns have kind of taken a back seat once again, not just to the Bengals, but now also again to the Steelers and to the Ravens, all teams that look like they've all improved, where the Browns kind of just are going along. I mean, I guess that would be where I want to start with Spencer. Like, what did they do this offseason that made them better?
Can Jim Schwartz, because a lot of Bills fans hold Jim Schwartz in high regard.
Sure.
That's all right. Can he be somebody that will this actually be a defense that will improve and that'll actually win you a game single-handedly? I don't know. So that's why having Spencer on here shortly will be good to kind of learn a little bit about the Browns.
A little bit of a scare with Dolphins today. I don't know if you saw this or not, but left tackle Terran Armstead was carted off the field with a leg injury. And that's not what you want to see if you're a fan of the Dolphins. Your left tackle getting rolled up on and carted off the field. 32 years old now. And he, as he was leaving the field, he kind of gave a thumbs up to Tyreek Hill, letting him know that he was okay. And Hill had a conversation with him, wanted to know what was wrong. He's like, what's wrong is I'm just old. Like Armstead feeling every bit of the 32 years that he is.
I want to learn more. This is kind of something that's happening today. So these joint practices, which we haven't had in years, right? It was the last time I think was actually Johnny Manziel was here with the Browns. One of them got really heated yesterday, Buccaneers and Jets. And today was scheduled to be the second practice, and the Jets said, no, we're good.
Oh.
So the Buccaneers are there in the tri-state area with nowhere to practice. So is this just because things got too heated? Who pulled the plug on that? To me, that should be just kind of something when you go into these, like, you know it's going to get heated. So to the rescue, actually, New York Football Giants. The Buccaneers practice at the Giants facility today because the Jets wanted nothing to do with the Buccaneers. That's an interesting preseason game all of a sudden coming.
Yeah. Wow, that's have we ever heard of that before? Has that ever happened?
No.
I don't know that I've ever heard of a team saying we're calling off a joint practice for anything other than player safety or inclement weather. That feels weird.
It does. This is Rick Stroud tweeting out the pictures today at the Giants facility as the Buccaneers, like literally they're showing up off the bus. They don't have anywhere to change. It's a high school. They're just, like high school. Like they're showing up and, all right, let's get some work in here, fellas. I mean, it's bad business, I think, if you're the Jets.
Well, it's funny how the intention is, hey, it's good. We'll have some reps against our opponent. You get to hit guys other than your teammates, mix it up a little bit, but you do give up a bit of your own personal control when you do that, right? Like if you were a team coming to St. John Fisher to do a joint practice with the Buffalo Bills, the Bills still have control of that practice, and you better have trust with the coach that you're working with there, that you're both teams are going to benefit from this. The idea that the Jets, that Salah's telling Todd Bowles' team, nah, hit the bricks, go find somewhere else.
Yeah, Todd Bowles, like, oh my gosh, he's not Buddy Ryan. Give me a break here. Like this was a physical practice. It was a bad day for the Jets' offensive line, and I'm just wondering, are the Jets more concerned about football or, as we say, content? That'll be an episode of Hard Knocks that I'll certainly like to watch. What went into this decision? Why you said, hey, Bucks, no, we'll see you at the preseason game. Right?
Full disclosure, I haven't watched any of Hard Knocks yet this season. I haven't heard much about it. I know that this week's episode, I guess, has like a mentalist or a magician or somebody at the team facility and doing card tricks with Aaron Rodgers, whatever. I saw that clip. The player that I really am curious about is Mekhi Becton. Like, I really want to know how they're dealing with him, how they're treating him. It really feels like he's on the outs with Robert Saleh, and quotes along the lines of, Becton needs to show us that he can play an entire game without having to come out. Basically, saying, guy's out of shape, guy can't stay healthy, guy is somebody we can't rely on, and which is, it's maddening if you're a Jets fan, I imagine, because this is the guy that when he was drafted, a mountain of a human being. You're like, this is a guy that can anchor our line for seasons on end. And it hasn't worked out. It just hasn't worked out at all with Mekhi Becton.
No, like the Bills way long ago. Do you remember Mike Williams?
I do.
Like Mike Williams, like, hey, he just kind of went AWOL from camp. I needed a few days off. That's not the same situation, certainly, but it should bring comfort to Bills fans when we talk about, oh my gosh, who's going to be the swing tackle? Are the Bills really going to look at Richard Garage as a swing tackle? we're talking about backups for Buffalo. We're talking about the backup tackle. We're talking about the backup quarterback. There's a real problem for the Jets' offensive line. It's not like they can go out there and sign somebody right now that's going to fix it.
We're going to get some answers to the questions we have about the Cleveland Browns, who have their Week 2 preseason matchup against the Eagles tonight. We'll welcome in Rochester native Spencer German, doing great things at our Odyssey Sports sister station, 92.3 The Fan in Cleveland. He stops by the sports bar next here on The Fan Rochester.
Odyssey has sports for every fan. Keep up with your favorite teams from across
Sports Update.
Buffalo Bills head coach Sean McDermott said Josh Allen and the rest of the starters will see about a quarter and a half Saturday night when the Bills play their second preseason game. This is taking place in Pittsburgh. Once again from today, Terrell Bernard, linebacker, did not practice. He's dealing with a soft tissue injury. Bills and Steelers, our pregame coverage Saturday begins at 4 o'clock. The kickoff at 6:30 here on the Fan Rochester. Tonight it's week 2 of the preseason, beginning with the Browns and the Eagles. What about the Cleveland Browns? We'll talk to Spencer German, Rochester native, now with 92.3 The Fan in Cleveland, joining us next year in the Sports Bar. Tonight, the Wings are in Buffalo. The Red Sox, a 4 o'clock start in Washington. One game in progress. They go to the 5th in Kansas City. The Mariners and Royals tied at 1. Gene Battaglia, the sports leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan, Rochester.
Pull up a stool and join us. 585-866-4FAN. 866-4326. The Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia on the Sports Leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan, Rochester.
It's one of our favorites, really, from the 585, doing great things in Cleveland at our Odyssey Sports sister station, 92.3 The Fan. Spencer German is in the Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia. Spencer, I want to be optimistic about the Browns going into this season. I've said it multiple times this offseason. The last time we saw Deshaun Watson play a full season of football, all he did was lead the league in passing yards, but it feels different. Where are you at with where the Browns are heading into this season, Spencer? Welcome on in.
Thanks for having me, guys. Always a pleasure to jump on with you guys back in my hometown, so I'm excited to be here. I think where your head's at with it is I think where a lot of Browns fans' heads are at with it, myself included, because, listen, I could have sold the Browns to almost anybody the last couple of years in terms of just looking at the roster on paper and feeling really good about the direction they were heading, and in 2020 they make the playoffs, and you think, all right, they're going to come out the following year and they're going to kind of replicate that and maybe go a little bit deeper into the playoffs. And, they gave the Chiefs a test in that playoff in the divisional round in 2020, and you're kind of feeling pretty good about things. And then they've taken some steps back. So I've kind of had to reserve myself, even as I look at a roster that I think is actually better than it's been the last couple of years, because there is a big question mark with Deshaun Watson, and there's some other question marks just across the roster as well. I think the receiver position, I still have some questions because, you got Amari Cooper, and people are really excited in this town about Elijah Moore, but he's also an unproven commodity in the sense that he had one great year, and then the Jets didn't really want to keep him around to play football with Aaron Rodgers, so there's some questions there as to what he really brings to the table. So, I think there's the realism of what this team looks like, and you can always throw out the on-paper viewpoint. But at the same time, I think fans kind of have those tempered expectations until the team kind of proves it to them, and to take it a step further, until Deshaun kind of proves it to them. Because I believe there's still a top 10 caliber quarterback in there. I don't think that just evaporates because he didn't play for a couple years. But they have to prove that they can pull that out of him as a coaching staff and that he still has that left. And I think there's been some signs of that this offseason. First preseason game he played in, he looked pretty comfortable. But, until I see it, I certainly am right there with a lot of people on the outside looking in, feeling like the Browns could be a sneaky contender, but I'm not willing to put my name on that take until I see something in the early stages of the season.
Did the Browns do enough, in your opinion, to help bolster that offense this offseason around Deshaun Watson, Spencer?
I think I'll say this. I think their efforts to build around Deshaun and get him weapons are noticeable. But again, as I kind of alluded to in the first answer there, like Elijah Moore, again, a lot of hype about him right now. He's had a phenomenal training camp. Him and Deshaun Watson seem to be on the same page and seem to be really developing quite the connection. But I don't know behind Amari Cooper that I trust everything that's at the wide receiver position. Donovan Peoples-Jones has kind of gotten steadily better every single year, but it doesn't seem like the team has really committed to him being a long-term player here. He's in a contract year essentially because this is his last year in a contract. Like I said, Elijah Moore, for whatever reason, the Jets moved on from him. I understand that he might be really hyped up right now, but he's again another guy that I need to see something from before I believe that he is just this bona fide number 2 or even maybe a future number 1 receiver for them. So I have questions at wide receiver. I think other than that, though, it's kind of a dream scenario for Deshaun because the offensive line is still really, really good. You got some really good players up there. The only question really is that left tackle position in Jedrick Wills. You got Nick Chubb in the backfield with you. So, yeah, I think ultimately, overall, I think he has the tools to be successful, but there's a few kind of ancillary question marks about certain guys and how much of contributors they will be.
Spencer, update me on that offensive line because I think a lot of us view that as the strength of this team. You mentioned Jedrick Wills there on the left side. We're familiar with Wyatt Teller. He might be one of the best guards going in the NFL. Is that offensive line still as strong as it has been in the past?
I think so, yeah. The big question, like I said, is Jedrick Wills, the left tackle that Andrew Berry's real first draft pick that he made when he took over as GM, and he hasn't really panned out. It was a decent, solid first year where people sort of said, okay, there's some signs there. Year 2, he took a step back, and then last year he left a lot to be desired, and that is a lot. I'll tell you this. There was a video last week, actually, of him going against Myles Garrett at practice, and Myles Garrett blew right past him, and it turned into this whole debate on social media over well, is it Myles Garrett being Myles Garrett, or is it Jedrick Wills being terrible? So it's a hot topic when you talk about Jedrick Wills in this town right now. But he's the big question mark. I think across the board, though, Joe Bitonio, maybe a bona fide Hall of Famer at some point. Wyatt Teller, as you mentioned, very, very good. And then you got Jack Conklin on the other side. And then at the center position, they sort of found a diamond in the rough last year. They were planning on starting Nick Harris there, and then he got hurt in training camp. And then Ethan Posick kind of emerged and took over that role, and he was fantastic throughout the season. And there was a point during the offseason where I don't even think the Browns thought they had a chance to re-sign him because he was a free agent. And then the market kind of played out, and they ended up working out a deal to keep him. So, yeah, it's been – if you want to sit and look at Andrew Berry's players that he's drafted or found or developed, he's always seemed to be able to hit on offensive linemen, and it also helps that you have Bill Callahan here as well.
We're talking to Spencer German, who is now doing evenings and other things out the Fan in Cleveland. So, Spencer, looking at the other side of the ball, and Myles Garrett, certainly, that's a guy you love to anchor. First of all, he left with an injury this week. What's the severity of that? Will he be fine for week 1? I would assume so. But that defensive line, is it good enough to apply pressure on those quarterbacks you're going to need to get after in the division?
I think so. If we're trying to look at the offseason checklist for this team, defensive line I think is at the top of the list in terms of things that they bolstered and I think got right here. You obviously mentioned Myles Garrett, who was the one piece that's still here. Obo Okoronkwo was a great signing from Houston. Za'Darius Smith, kind of the late offseason trade that they made, opposite of Myles Garrett. And then Dalvin Tomlinson, who they got from the Vikings, they signed him in the offseason as well. They really put a lot of stock in trying to bolster that group. And I can't even forget to mention they just signed Shelby Harris, who was with Seattle last year as well, and he's had a pretty solid career as a defensive tackle. So it's evident, and I've kind of been saying this here in town, that the maybe most important offseason addition that this team made was Jim Schwartz, because it's obvious that with him coming into the fold, he made it known what he needs to make his defense successful. You guys are obviously pretty familiar with Jim Schwartz as well, myself too, having seen him when he was obviously with the Bills all those years ago before Rex Ryan obviously came in. And, he's just completely transformed, at least through training camp, it looks like, what this group's going to do and how effective they're going to be. I have a lot of high expectations for that group, and I think they're going to live up to it because they look like they're really, really good.
Spencer, by the end of last season, it was pretty clear that Kareem Hunt had lost a step. He walks in free agency. You still have Nick Chubb, who's fantastic. But I'm wondering about who's behind Nick Chubb, because we've seen Nick Chubb from time to time get dinged up. And they used Chubb and Hunt as kind of like a 1-2 tandem in that backfield for the Browns. We know how good that line is. So my question is Jerome Ford enough? Is Dominic Felton enough behind Nick Chubb?
Yeah, I'm actually really encouraged by Jerome Ford. He was their draft pick a year ago, and they, I think, wanted to get him more reps last year if it wasn't for the presence of Kareem Hunt. But obviously when you have that 1-2 punch, you're going to kind of ride them as much as possible. I think the organization's really excited about him. I think he's going to be – I don't know if I don't know if I can put him and say he's going to be you're not going to miss a beat without Kareem Hunt, because Kareem Hunt, maybe not last year, but his first couple of years here in Cleveland was obviously phenomenal. He was a great sort of counter to Nick Chubb at times. But I think that there's a lot of good signs that he could be a nice sort of player behind him that spells him at times and gets some of the snaps and maybe becomes your third down back. Demetric Felton's kind of been a Swiss Army knife guy, and he hasn't gotten a lot of reps. I think they were excited about him coming out, and he hasn't really panned out. He's probably on the roster bubble right now. And then I know John Kelly's another guy who's kind of in the fold right now during training camp. But that's another position that I think behind Nick Chubb, which fans obviously feel pretty good about having him, they're still sort of trying to wait and see how it sort of pans out. So we'll see if there's any other additions that are made. Maybe we'll have roster cut down day, which should be a little bit of a roller coaster for all these teams now that everybody's just getting released all at once. But yeah, I think they feel pretty good about Jerome Ford behind him, and I do too. The other thing I'll say, I feel like Nick Chubb gets kind of discredited because he doesn't get a lot of the third down snaps as a pass catcher, but I want to see them use him more on those third down plays and catching passes out of the backfield. I think it was a luxury to have Kareem Hunt where you didn't have to rely on Nick Chubb for that, but I don't think I don't even know if it's that he's bad or people think he's bad at it, but we just haven't seen it, and I kind of wonder if they'll use him a little bit more in those situations as well.
Spencer German, our guest, talking some Browns as that begins the second preseason game for everybody except the Browns and the Jets. Preseason game number 3 tonight. That'll be on NFL Network. Spencer, I'm already looking ahead to Week 1, and I think that is a fascinating matchup.
I think we all are.
Yeah, gosh. Could the Browns actually kind of sneak up on the Bengals? Because, I think we all expect Joe Burrow to be out there, but you're not getting the work in right now, obviously. So your thoughts on that Week 1 matchup? How do you view this from the Cleveland's perspective? Should Browns fans expect a W in Week 1?
Well, here's the other thing with Burrow that's interesting is last year I think he missed a good portion of training camp as well. I think didn't he get his appendix removed or whatever it was, and so he was out for a period of time. And Week 1 against the Steelers was probably his worst game of the season. I think he threw 4 picks. He looked really bad. Obviously, people were questioning, the Bengals having that Super Bowl hangover, and then they bounced back. But that's another factor here. Like you mentioned, him not getting any of the reps right now. You do wonder how that plays into Week 1 because teams are already sloppy as is Week 1. They're kind of getting back into the real game speed of things. But, yeah, I think it's a very fair question. From the Cleveland lens, I've been saying, and most preseasons, I go into it and say, listen, I don't really need to see the starters all that much. I don't really care. I trust these guys. But in this instance with the Browns, they have such a different, unique situation than any team's ever had in terms of having Deshaun Watson on your roster, where I want to see him get as many reps as possible. There's been a lot of talk about the new offense that they're implementing that's supposed to be more to his liking and more to his style. He's trying to get a better feel, I think, with his offensive line and them understanding how you block for him, especially when a play breaks down and he has to kind of roll out and make a play with his feet. So I want to see them try to get as much of the rust off that's maybe left as possible before Week 1, because I think this Browns team, with the schedule they have, they play all 3 of their division opponents within the first 5 weeks of the season. They have to really hit the ground running, and they have no time to waste to, let's get off to a slow start and lose a division game, and then maybe we'll pick it up later. No, they gotta try to win that game. And if the Bengals are going to be a little bit rusty and maybe they can afford that, I don't think the Browns can. So, yeah, I think it's so important that they're sort of locked in, ready to go for that game. And if that means giving Deshaun Watson more reps here in the preseason, I know he's not going to play tonight, but maybe in that 4th preseason game we get a little bit more of him. I'm okay with that because I think that it's a big opportunity Week 1 against the Bengals to kind of put yourself ahead of the 8 ball in a division that's going to be really, really tough, and a conference, frankly, that's going to be really, really tough.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because it feels like around the league, Week 2 of the preseason is the new Week 3 of the preseason. A lot of teams are going to treat it as like their dress rehearsal, but the Browns are in a different spot because this is actually their 3rd exhibition, and you mentioned we won't see Watson tonight. How much of the starters will we see tonight against Philadelphia? And tell us a little bit more about a guy who, man, when I watch him play, he's the kind of player that I think to myself, just find a roster spot for him. Start him, you cowards. Dorian Thompson-Robinson is just fun and exciting and electric from what we've seen so far of him this preseason. Is he getting the start tonight?
He is getting the start tonight. That's been a little bit of a debate here. Obviously not at the forefront of people's minds, but the question over whether or not it should be Dorian Thompson-Robinson or Josh Dobbs as the number 2 quarterback. I think the Browns, by all indications, are saying that Dobbs is still solidly the number 2 guy because he's not even dressing tonight, so they're trying to protect him, obviously. But I think it's a fair debate because Dorian Thompson-Robinson has looked really, really good throughout the preseason. I do wonder if they keep 3 quarterbacks and keep him around because he has had such a good preseason. If you expose him, somebody will pick him up. You know they will. So I think they maybe try to keep 3 and utilize that emergency quarterback rule. But it's also hard with a team like this because I do think they've addressed their depth issues at a number of positions. And if you keep a 3rd quarterback, that obviously opens you up to maybe lose a guy that you'd like to keep elsewhere. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out specifically. I don't know yet in terms of tonight, like what starters are going to play. Somebody may have reported it, but I might have just missed it at this point. But I think maybe a few people get in the mix, but I think the main guys, your Nick Chubbs, your Deshaun Watsons, your Myles Garretts, aren't going to be out there tonight for the Browns. And we'll see if there's been some talk that they might play that 4th preseason game against the Chiefs next week, so we'll see.
Spencer, I'd be just curious to get your thoughts on the Manziel doc. Now, the disclaimer here, like nobody, maybe there's like a principal or 2 still around, but that was even before Haslam became the owner. But it's just got to be embarrassing for a fan base that they allowed a quarterback. Yeah, I don't watch film. I'm not showing up to practice. I mean, how did that go over in Cleveland when you all viewed that?
It's funny because there's a lot of fans who feel, I lived this. I don't really need to watch this doc, and they didn't need to rehash it all. But I'll say this: I thought that the doc itself, it was sort of eye-opening in terms of getting the perspective of him at Texas A&M and becoming this sort of overnight sensation after he beats Alabama. And you can kind of, for me, like there was a level of sympathizing with him because. Yeah, I mean, how do you handle that as a 19-year-old? Like you're a superstar instantly like that, and you got to sort of cope with that, and all these people trying to be in your face and find out who you are, and that's a lot. So I can understand why maybe he took a turn that he did, and he admitted in the doc, obviously, that he fell in love with being that superstar celebrity. But I thought that they glossed over the Browns part of it, which was like once he got to the NFL, like how did this all go downhill so fast? And it felt like they were just kind of rushing to get to the end of the documentary. And obviously part of that is Johnny Manziel is not really going to talk about that probably, and he was going to try to be painted in somewhat of a good light here. But I think overall, like Cleveland fans who did watch it, they thought it was somewhat enlightening, but they also just kind of knew, like, we lived this. We saw a lot of this. We saw the going to Vegas, taking his playbook with him when he first got drafted. The Vegas night he spent on a week that there was a game, and then he gets cut the next day. Like, that was a wild time here in Cleveland. And I've heard some stories just about, sometimes when he's been out in Cleveland, some of the crazy things that went on. So yeah, I think I walked away from my perspective feeling like some sense of empathy for him. But at the same time, I don't think it really registered all that much with Cleveland fans because what they want is like an apology. And I don't think he's ever going to give you that because he's just who he is.
So, Spencer, what do they got you doing now at the Fan? How can we get more of your work? Because you're doing a great job making all of us here in Rochester proud.
Thank you. Yeah, I host the Sunday show on our station from 10 to 2 on 92.2 The Fan here in Cleveland, and then I'm getting some opportunities every now and then to fill in on the night show. So 7 to midnight, I'll actually be in tomorrow night filling in on that show. And then once Sundays become game days, I should be involved in the pregame festivities once again for the station. So very much looking forward to that. I know we're a couple weeks away here. And like you said earlier, I'm right there with you, man. Just looking ahead to week 1, September 10th. Can't get here soon enough.
Yeah, last one for me, Spencer. It doesn't matter what the Guardians, where they finish in the standings. Is this a successful year because that Tim Anderson got laid out? What was that like that going through that whole experience?
That does feel like the one big win of the season for Cleveland, no doubt, because it's been a disappointment. I actually, last night, I don't know if you guys know who John Fanta is. He does college basketball on Fox, but he's a Cleveland native, so I bring him on every now and then because he loves just talking all things Cleveland sports. And he threw out there that he thought this was the most frustrating Guardian season in the last 2 decades, which I can't really fight him on because there were some high expectations this year, and yeah, that knockout punch to Tim Anderson felt like the only real victory they've had in a little bit of time here. So,
Spencer, enjoy the game tonight. Let's catch up again soon, man. Be well.
Sounds good. Anytime, guys. Always appreciate it. Take care.
There he is, Spencer German. From the 585, doing big things in Cleveland at 92.3 The Fan, our Odyssey Sports sister station. Appreciate him stopping by. Give us a little preview of the Cleveland Browns season and tonight's matchup against the Philadelphia Eagles in week 2 of the preseason.
That's what makes this time of year so great, because if you're a Browns fan, you can say, yeah, Burrow was terrible last year in week 1 against the Steelers, and he's not going to be ready. We can go up and grab that, and then who knows from there? It still comes down to Watson to me. You could talk about, the offensive line. You could talk about Nick Chubb. You could talk about Jim Schwartz. If he doesn't, show up, if he's not matching anywhere close to the dollar figure that you're paying him for, then, what are you doing in there in Cleveland?
Takes on tap next in the sports bar. It's time for I'll Drink to That.
Yeah, I'm going back to the well here, so to speak, on the whole blindside thing. But I did a little reading last night. I think there's some lessons here for everybody. Some of these numbers and facts, when I put them out, you might be like, oh, I get where Michael Orr is actually coming from on all this. Also, my week 1 pick here. No, I'm not picking Browns-Bengals today, although certainly that was enlightening talking to Spencer. But my thoughts on the Pittsburgh Steelers coming up.
I have a team that I'm going to predict will have the most disappointing season in 2023. They will end the season the most disappointing team in the league, with their expectations being where they are. I'll lay out why I believe what I believe when we play I'll Drink to That. Some takes on tap next in the sports bar. Danger and Battaglia on the Fan. Baseball season heading into the backstretch. Get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. FanDuel Sportsbook, official partner of 95.7 The Fan. And right now, new customers can get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. Here's a site to go to, fanduel.com/Mike, M-I-K-E. You use that website, join today, and then don't miss your chance to get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. Just go to fanduel.com/Mike to sign up. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball. Major League Baseball trademarks used with permission. 21 plus and physically present in New York. First online real money wager only. $10 deposit required. Refund issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets which expire in 7 days. Restrictions apply. See full terms at fanduel.com/sportsbook. For help with a gambling problem, call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369.
Odyssey has sports for every fan. Keep up with your favorite teams from across.
97 FM and AM 950 The Fan, Rochester.
The team in the AFC that will wear the crown as the most disappointing team in the league when it's all said and done. I'll tell you who that team is and why I believe they will wear that crown. Without drink to that.
The Jets we talking about?
Not the Jets.
Oh.
Getting close.
Boy, if it's the Buffalo Bills, then people are going to hang up. Look, like most things, it's about the money. Yes, forgive me. I have another take here on this movie Blindside breakup between Michael Oher and the Tuohy family. Because I did some reading on this last night, and I kind of learned, like, okay, I could see what would set this player off here. Sean Tuohy is a rich man. Not NFL owner rich, but money you and I will never see. He made his money on a fast food chain here. Land that they came on. In 2019, he sold the majority of his business for $213 million. And how much of that family wealth will actually go to Oher? Yeah, nothing. Oh, there's more. On the back end of the movie, to this day, the family still gets 2.5% of the sales. That's a lot of money.
Nice little investment.
Yeah, and ironically, sales are going to go up right now since we're all talking about this. Here's the take here. It has nothing to do with the movies. Sure, the family viewed this as a business arrangement all along. But that's not the right way to do business. It's like Mark Zuckerberg, Facebook. Do you remember that story, how he tricked one of his partners into buying off his share? To me, it's about reputation. Your reputation is more important than the dollars here. But maybe that's what makes an alien. That's so cutthroat. That's how you get to the top.
So, okay, you did the research, and I'm kind of blissfully ignorant to this story. I know a little bit about it, and I feel like the timing of it is unfortunate, given that this happened so long ago and he hasn't played football in so long now. So he's got money, he's had money, and they brought him in, but Oher's saying you guys didn't really truly adopt me, and Oher's trying to get what? Just a bigger share of that 2.5 or whatever you said they get from the blind side? Yeah,
like that. That's what this seems like. Like Oher gets nothing. He's not part of the family, but they're still representing themselves like this fairy tale. That's what it is, basically.
So do you believe that they brought him into their family instead of actually wanting to take care of him? They viewed him more as a paycheck?
Absolutely. 100%. And the irony is, if you actually watch that movie, there's a scene at the end where the NCAA does their investigation. They're like, literally they're saying this isn't legit, and they made the NCAA look stupid and mean and everything, and they were onto it originally, and they just let it pass for whatever reason.
I have to imagine, though, that they provided him with a loving home, a roof over his head, warm meals, like the things that you would want out of a family.
Transactional.
I understand.
Yeah. So now, hey, you know what? Stop the fairy tale, basically.
Okay. What are we expecting in terms of like conclusion to that story? Is there any satisfying conclusion to that story? Are they going to court? What do we know?
I would love that to go to court. I'd love to, we'd all eat it up as fast food, basically. No, there's not going to be a satisfying conclusion. There's not going to be this happy ending. And
will there be a settlement? Is that? Do we expect that there'll be some sort of settlement? That here's a couple million, go away.
That would be it.
Yeah. I hate these stories. I get that there's because of the movie and because of the backstory that it has a little bit more weight and it broadens its appeal. Like you have people like the boss lady upstairs that become familiar with it because they know the movie. But it's just like, the whole thing feels icky. All of it. The fact that this is, or the potential that this was transactional all along. The idea that he's making these claims, when he's making these claims, all of it just feels kind of
well. And then the other side of this too is like when this first happened, like, wait a second, your career ended in 2016. Why are we getting around to this now? And a lot of people are saying it's the new wife here that's kind of like goading him on to saying, hey, this isn't real. Let's get this on the record.
Gene, the more I think about it, the more I believe the Miami Dolphins are set up to be the most disappointing team in the league. It's going to start with Tua. And let's just view him for what he is. East Coast Jimmy Garoppolo. Fast release, accurate in the middle of the field, weak arm. Possibly the weakest arm of all NFL starters. Taylor Heineke isn't starting anymore. He's a poor decision maker on the field. 100% of his success throwing deep. Well, you can attribute that all to Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. I hear you. Danger. That offense was great when Tua was on the field. Yeah. At the beginning of the season last year when Mike McDaniel threw a ton of motion at defenses, they were productive. This is the NFL. And as the season went on, defenses began to adjust. You'd see more press man on the Dolphins' wideouts, meaning the weakness for a defense is deep down the sideline. It's a throw. Tua doesn't have the arm strength to make. Tua ended last year on a horrible skid. 4 losses. He completed just barely 50% of his passes. The games he missed were against top 10 defenses in points allowed per drive. He had nice stats against less than challenging defenses, but not enough is said about just how poorly he played down the stretch. And all of that is before we even mention his concussion history, which may be enough to keep him off the field for large chunks of time again this season. It took Tua over a month to clear protocol after he was concussed against Green Bay last season. Their tight ends and receiver rooms, both worse than they were last year. There are going to be growing pains as well with Vic Fangio's defense. They're going to have to adjust to that now without Jalen Ramsey, by the way, until Christmas. This is a takes-based, Gene. I feel safe saying it. The 2023 Miami Dolphins will finish last in the AFC East with 6, maybe 7 wins.
Wow, I'm surprised you didn't save that for bold prediction day. That's bold, dude.
Maybe I'll save it for bold prediction. Maybe I'll replay that one on bold prediction.
Okay, that's bold. And I'm going to give you just kind of some things that maybe people forgot about that will help bolster your argument. Because what are you talking about? Tua's a top 10 quarterback in this league. Okay.
No way.
If he was, remember, the Dolphins legitimately tried. They had a deal in place to trade for Deshaun Watson, except Deshaun Watson couldn't settle everything, and that's how it fell apart. Okay.
What did Tom Brady?
Tom Brady was going to be the quarterback last year.
That's right. Listen, I'm not anti-Tua, okay? I just know what I see. I know what the stats say. I know what the record is. I'm just stating the guy has a weak arm. He doesn't have an NFL caliber arm. He has the weakest arm of all NFL starters at present. There are throws that he can't make. And if he could, we wouldn't be having conversations about Tom Brady becoming the starter of the team or let's get Deshaun Watson in here. They know it. They see it. They fell in love with, the owner fell in love with the idea of having this Tua Tagovailoa, the Heisman Trophy, the Alabama quarterback. It's not working. It hasn't worked. He doesn't have that ability. And defenses are getting smarter to that offense. They were getting smarter as the season wore on. I don't believe in it. I'm not buying in to the Miami Dolphins.
I think the Dolphins are going to start off 1-3 first quarter. And that's going to set the tone because they open at the Chargers. That's a fun game.
Mm-hmm.
Week 2, from a Bills perspective, who do you want? Miami at New England?
I mean,
you want to kill the fish right there, right?
Yeah.
Like that would be, and Miami's won the last couple against New England, and the Mike Gesicki revenge game. You get Mr. Unlimited going down to Miami, and I don't know, that would be kind of fun too. Though the coach that you tried to get now is going to come in and do a number on you, Sean Payton, and then you get the Buffalo Bills there in Week 4. That's going to be in Buffalo.
They could go 0-4.
Yeah,
they could start the season 0-4. Which would be, I mean, they didn't end the season well last year. Again, Tua lost his last 4 starts. It wasn't good.
Okay, so for everybody watching right now on YouTube,
he didn't. He wasn't vaping.
He was vaping. Mike McVape too.
Yeah, Mike McVape.
Yeah, that's kind of it. So not going to pick Dolphins Chargers today. Week 1 matchup. The Steelers are getting plus money at home. Week 1. That's an. Oh, it's the Niners, San Francisco. Team many are picking to go to the Super Bowl. Yeah. It's a Niners team that went on the road last season and lost to one of the worst teams in the league Week 1. Chicago.
I remember.
Sorry. That was Trey Lance at quarterback.
It was also a monsoon. I mean, it was a terrible, field conditions were not normal.
Okay. This is Brock Purdy. And maybe the take isn't more pro. It's less pro Pittsburgh and more. I'm just not a believer in Brock Purdy. If Purdy is really good, then scouts across this league should resign.
Yeah.
Okay, I expect a regression to the mean, and I'll take an AFC playoff hopeful at home, getting points in Week 1. And no, I'm not pandering to you, Danger. I'm taking the Steelers +3.
I like the pick. I am not as down on Brock Purdy as you are. In fact, it's not about the scouts to me as much as it is about Kyle Shanahan just knowing how to get the most out of his quarterback, and he'll run him into the ground like he has done time and time again. He'll just churn through whoever's there, make the best out of a bad situation. He did it with Garoppolo. He can't get through to Lance for whatever reason, but Brock Purdy, for whatever reason, is gelling and understands that Kyle Shanahan offense. You haven't seen Kyle Shanahan this decisive, really, since Garoppolo was firmly entrenched as his starter in terms of who's going to be the starter at quarterback. So I
think it's just comparing him to everything else there. Like Trey Lance is a bust. Can we say that at this point?
No, I don't know that we can just yet. I would say Brock Purdy has won over Kyle Shanahan, has won over that team. There's a reason why he's kind of already cemented that starter role, even though he's coming off the elbow surgery. Like, they're going to put him on. This is what Kyle Shanahan does. He's probably not ready to go out there after the elbow surgery, right? But Kyle Shanahan doesn't care. They ruined RG3. You're just a commodity. Get out there, play. I like Brock Purdy this season. I like the Niners this season. I like following and listening to and reading the work of smart people. Aaron Schatz from Football Outsiders made his Super Bowl prediction, and based on his data and his analytics and everything, he has the Niners going to the Super Bowl to take on the Buffalo Bills. And wouldn't that be fun? I would love that. Here you go. I'll drink to that in the sports bar. Tony Cotillo. We'll talk some fantasy sports here in about 20, 25 minutes or so. We have time for your calls on the Good Smoke Barbecue and Pub Wingman line. You can join us at 866-4FAN. Award-winning barbecue from Good Smoke Barbecue and Pub. The new location at 135 West Commercial Street, East Rochester, goodsmokebbq.com. You can also watch the sports bar at The Fan Rochester on YouTube and Twitch. More next on The Fan Rochester.
If this were a Reese's Rochester and streaming online and in the Odyssey app at The Fan Rochester, the sports leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan Rochester.
Always live on the free Odyssey app.
The Fan Rochester Sports Update.
Buffalo Bills head coach Sean McDermott says Josh Allen and the rest of the starters will see about a quarter and a half coming up Saturday night when Buffalo plays preseason game number 2 in Pittsburgh. Once again, Terrell Bernard did not practice today. The linebacker dealing with a soft tissue injury. We'll have the coverage Saturday beginning at 4 o'clock. And the kickoff at 6:30 here on the Fan Rochester. Tonight, week 2 of the preseason beginning. It's actually the third preseason game for the Browns as they are in Philadelphia. Rochester Red Wings, their series continuing tonight in Buffalo. In the majors, the Red Sox are in Washington. That's just underway. The Yankees are under 500. They're off tonight. They host Boston this coming weekend. Just one game in progress. Kansas City leading Seattle 4-2. They're in the 7th. Sports brought to you by GetMyPerks.com to get fall fun at Stokey Farms. Gene Battaglin, the sports leader. The Fan Rochester.
Top Shelf Sports Talk. You're hanging out in the sports bar with Danger and Battaglia on the sports leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan, Rochester.
I'm just kind of reading through notes from today's practice, Gino. There's one player who made a couple of plays, made his case as to why he should be part of the final 53. I'll tell you a little bit about the plays made by this player on defense for the Buffalo Bills here in a
I
second.
thought you were going to go to Andy Isabella.
Well, we'll talk a little bit about
Isabella.
Andy because, I mean, he's saying all the right things and doing all the right things as well. Welcome on into the Sports Bar. We appreciate you joining us and listening along at 95.7 FM and AM 950. We sound our best in the free-to-download Odyssey app or on your smart device when you ask it to play 95.7 The Fan. You can watch the Sports Bar at The Fan Rochester on YouTube and on Twitch as well. No, Gino. No, it's AJ Klein who made a couple of big plays on defense.
Dude, here I'm thinking, oh my gosh, you're going to tell us about some young player.
Well, you mentioned
like Dorian Williams. No,
you mentioned
AJ
Andy
Klein.
Isabella. Andy Isabella broke up a pass that was intended for Isabella during today's practice. He also broke up another pass that was intended for a tight end, and then same drive, interception of Matt Barkley, making a big play here as he was kind of moving out of bounds. Don't tell AJ Klein that he's not in the mix for that middle linebacker position with Tyrell Dodson and Terrell Bernard. Bernard has been out with that hammy injury since the last day of training camp. We saw that happen at St. John Fisher. And Dodson, well, I think you're just expecting more out of Dodson that, you're hearing these reports out of practice. You kind of see what you see on the field. And we'll see more of it this weekend when they go to Pittsburgh. But AJ Klein making his case and making a couple of big plays today at practice.
AJ Klein, you could cut him. You could go beyond the beach for a month and you know what, AJ, come on back. Because you know what? He's always available. Always. When the Bills let him go, okay, the Bears brought him in. Nah. The Ravens brought him in. Nah. Yeah. Didn't he get traded from the Bears to the Ravens, actually? And nah.
He was part of the package that sent Roquan.
Wow, that's an even trade.
Yeah. It's, look, worth pointing out. That's a note from today's practice, and we'll see AJ Klein, I'm sure, plenty on the field on Saturday evening. You mentioned Andy Isabella, and he's become a little bit of a story. Actually spoke to the media today. We heard from Sean McDermott prior to practice, and he was asked about Andy Isabella. He was asked about Khalil Shakir and the camp that he's had, the inconsistencies in his game. Sean McDermott on that wide receiver competition.
Can you carry your confidence through the course of a season? That's a trait, that's a mental skill, and I think Khalil is one of our more confident players, and we're confident in him, and I know Josh is as well, and I don't see that becoming an issue for him, but it is something that is a challenge for performers, especially in this type of environment.
Isabella keeps turning heads. But if he's going to make the roster, it's going to be at the expense of somebody like Deontay Hardy, who today also had himself a nice practice, making a couple of really impressive plays on the field. Andy Isabella, for what it's worth, saying all the right things. I mean, listen to this bit of sound from Andy Isabella in his press conference and tell me that Sean McDermott isn't just drooling, salivating at the words coming out of Isabella's mouth.
You come in here and you set a standard for yourself. I set a high standard for myself, and I kind of try to carry that standard with me every day, whether it's staying after and studying more the plays when I go out there. I know what I'm doing, and I bring a lot of energy and play hard. And I think when you do that, the ball finds energy and the ball finds people that work hard and do the right thing. So,
there was a Section 5 coach, Danger, and I'm not going to identify it, but like his quote, and this is for like football guys, football doesn't need us. We need football. Like, I didn't just hear like that's a McDermott, like, yes, anything you can to improve. And like all those platitudes, blah, blah, blah. Hey, look, he's got something that really is needed on any offense, speed. But when you look at Andy Isabella, just like, okay, the question, why? What happened in Arizona? Why did they give up on him? Why was he not active at all in his second year? Why did he get cut? Why was he on the Ravens practice squad basically all last year? And the Bills and anybody else could have picked him up at that point. Why? What is it? What are we missing here? His hands are going to turn to stone? What is it about Andy Isabella that the Cardinals soured? And then the Ravens were like, they didn't even wait to get to camp. Like, yeah, you know what? 90 players, but sorry, Andy, you're number 91. Hit the bricks.
Linebackers Terrell Bernard and Balin Spector did not participate in today's practice. Eli Ankou also not participating today. Gabe Davis came back to the practice field after he missed yesterday with soreness. Damian Harris and Cam Lewis both practiced. McDermott prior to practice said that both would be limited, but they were there on the field. So the team off tomorrow, traveling to Pittsburgh, taking on the Steelers with kickoff at 6:30. You can hear that action here on the Fan Rochester Saturday evening.
Yeah, this story out in New York, I think this is going to be something that kind of gains steam here throughout the week. So the Jets and Buccaneers agreed to this, this week of joint practices, and this is typical, right? Practice day number 1, practice day number 2. No, wait a second. The Jets actually canceled today on the Buccaneers. So the Buccaneers, they're not at their home facility. They're in the tri-state area. And this was Robert Saleh, quote, I like one from a safety measure standpoint. I never like 2 practices because the second practice is usually when the injuries happen. Okay. So then why did you kind of agree to this in the first place? Nobody's questioning him on that. So the Buccaneers, Rick Stroud, Tampa Bay Times, showing these photos of the Buccaneers just kind of showing up on a Giants practice field.
Has that ever happened before? I feel like I've never heard of that before. Like joint practices getting canceled because of inclement weather I've heard of before, but I've never heard a team say, no, 1 joint practice is enough. We don't want 2.
There apparently were 4 skirmishes yesterday.
Yeah, it was ugly.
Okay.
I love it.
So, like, this is football, right?
Yeah.
So now you're being too rough with us. You could get hurt here. Woo.
I'm not going to do it. But Gino, I'm not going to do Saul Rosenberg as Robert Saleh.
Robert Saleh.
Robert Saleh is Robert Rosenberg.
Oh, the Buccaneers are so mean to me.
Hey, don't talk to me about Todd Bowles. He comes here, he's mean, and my guys are getting pushed around. I don't want an injury to happen. I'm canceling practice. I'm falling down the stairs. My shoes are falling off. No.
Yeah, I like how you said I'm not going to do it. Then
I know
you did it.
I know.
So there's a cookie there, Danger. I'm not going to eat it.
Easy. I mean, I have no willpower, no self-control. You know that.
The last week, the Jets and Panthers were due to have a second day, but that was weather that canceled.
Right. That's right.
So like that'll happen, but not because of melees.
Well, I just think if you're going to do a joint practice and you're the team visiting, you're giving up some of the control that you would normally have of your preseason, right? Like the Bills have operated in a way where they are very controlled. Their environment is controlled for the entirety of preseason. They don't go anywhere for joint practice. They haven't invited anybody in for joint practice. They're handling their business. It feels like they're doing it in a professional way. And I don't know. I mean, if you were to get that invite, you would have to take it seriously, I suppose. But ultimately, what do you stand to gain other than, hey, we're going to go up against somebody other than your teammates in practice?
Well, from the standpoint of like one of the, like, if you're Todd Bowles, you're furious. Like, you got to you're asking me to go find a place to practice here? Like, at least give us your facility here for a couple hours. Nope. The New York Giants to the rescue today.
I can make another bold prediction. My bold prediction would be that at the end of this upcoming season, both of these head coaches will be looking for work.
Who's the real head coach of the Jets? It's the quarterback, right?
Well, if things don't go well for the Jets, I mean, it's going to be ugly, right?
Yeah, Todd Bowles he's like an intern without the intern tag.
Yeah, and I feel bad because he's a good defensive coach, and he's probably best suited as a defensive coordinator, but I've never been a fan of Todd Bowles' head coach just because the record isn't there. The track record speaks for itself. He's not a winner when it comes to being a head coach.
Do you think Bruce Arians is upset he's not coaching because like how he got bounced upstairs? Like, I think that was just Brady like, you want me to come back? Okay, here are my conditions.
Yeah, it's just a weird scene, right? This is almost like, it feels almost like you have to sell your soul to the devil if you want that championship ring. I mean, you think about how the Rams won and what they are now. Yeah, how the Bucks won and what they are now. Like, it's ugly.
So, for the Bills to get over the top, what do we have to sell? Sell our soul, Dane.
How do we sell our soul? Who do we bring in? What's the missing element, the missing piece?
Which middle linebacker is out there right now?
Yeah.
We could just give him a first round pick. In fact, give him 2.
Right.
Levante David, yes, come on in.
Yeah. Leverage it now, mortgage your future, and just go all in now. F them picks. Or what the Bucks did. Tom Brady, whatever you want. Here you go. We'll deal with what we have to deal with down the road. Yeah, weird situation between the Jets and the Bucks there with a joint practice that wasn't a joint practice, and the Bucks having to kind of scramble and find a practice facility to get their work in advance of the preseason game. We're entering peak fantasy draft season, Gino, and Tony Cotillo is one of our favorites. Win Daily Sports. You hear him on Fantasy Sports Radio.
I want to ask him what the ring is for.
Okay. I think that's fair. I think we have a good enough relationship with Tony now where we can dig a little bit deeper, learn a little bit more about him. What's up with the ring, Tony? Tell us. Tell us the backstory.
That gives him an opportunity to say, well, I won this expertly. You guys got to understand.
Yeah.
Like
that's exactly what I wanted.
I would assume that's what this is.
I imagine that Tony, like most fantasy football analysts, has a list of players that he is targeting that he can't leave a draft without. I want to learn a little bit more about who he's targeting, who he likes going into the season, and who he's avoiding as well. Tony Cotillo joining us next in the Sports Bar. We'll talk some fantasy football here on the Fan Rochester.
Odyssey has sports for every fan.
Sports Update.
Buffalo Bills head coach Sean McDermott said Josh Allen and the rest of his starters will see only about a quarter and a half coming up Saturday night. The Bills in Pittsburgh once again today. Terrell Bernard did not practice. He's dealing with a soft tissue injury. Our coverage Saturday afternoon will begin at 4 o'clock, 6:30 for the kickoff here on the Fan Rochester. Tonight, week 2 of the preseason, beginning with the Browns and the Eagles. We'll talk some fantasy football coming up next. Tony Cotillo will be our guest in the sports bar. Rochester Red Wings, they're in Buffalo tonight. On the Major League scoreboard, Boston in Washington. They're no score in the second. The Yankees under 500. They're off tonight, hosting Boston this coming weekend. One other game in progress, Kansas City leading Seattle 4-2 there in the 8th. Sports brought to you by GetMyPerks.com. Save half off through Stokey Farms. Gene Battaglia, the sports leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950. The Fan Rochester.
The beer is cold and the wings are hot. You're in the sports bar with Danger and Battaglia on the sports leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950 The Fan, Rochester.
You can hear him on Fantasy Sports Radio, Win Daily Sports. Always love talking fantasy football with Tony Cotillo. Gino's obsessed with your gigantic ring from your profile
What
picture.
is the ring for, Tony? What are you showing off in that photo?
You guys know that's a Super Bowl ring. Obviously, it's not the real deal. It's a listen, it's a prototype, but it's still Philadelphia Eagles Super Bowl ring.
Oh, I thought maybe it was like your fantasy, like this would have been like the ring to show off when you win.
Oh man, so. Tony, I'm all wrong. I mean, I knew you're an Eagles guy, but I didn't realize. Like when I saw that, I'm like, oh, he probably won that for winning some big prestigious fantasy football league or something.
No, that's where the championship belts come in. Yeah, get like the WWE replica championship belts for that. I'd rather have that than the ring. The ring's for my birds.
I love it. Tony, look, every year at this time, fantasy football experts, they do their lists, they do their rankings, they do their tiers. There's a handful of players that they convince themselves they can't leave the draft without. There's a handful of players they convince themselves they can't draft. You don't have to go too in-depth because we don't have all night. I would love to just talk fantasy football and peek around inside your brain and see what you're thinking. But is there a specific player that you find yourself not leaving drafts with this draft season?
Oh, that's a good one. That's a really good one because this year I think there's a lot. There really is, and it all depends on what kind of system that we're looking at, and that's as far as what your scoring system is. Yeah. I think the wide receivers are 100% the top position this year to really go after. And I'm going to listen. There's one guy. I think you guys know who he is. I'll talk about Garrett Wilson. Listen. I think Garrett Wilson is a guy. I want Garrett Wilson everywhere. That's the guy I want. And again, he's a top guy. I get that. But I think he's going to be a top 5 receiver this year. I continue to love Garrett Wilson. I love the rapport he already has with Aaron Rodgers. Now, Rodgers did injure his calf a little bit today. I'm not too worried about that. But he's a guy. And I will say this, locally, another receiver that you guys are, not you, but a lot of people out there aren't giving enough love to is Devontae Smith. I'm telling you now that Devontae Smith will have better numbers this year than A.J. Brown. He is that good. I've watched him in camp. I've read the story. He is polished, and he's a third-year wide receiver. And people that play fantasy football know third-year wide receivers, it's breakout time.
It's funny. You mentioned that, and I think when you think about the Eagles receivers, you think about A.J. Brown first and foremost. You're predicting that Devontae Smith could actually have a more productive season than A.J. Brown. There's another team out west that I think there's a similar situation going on with their receivers, and it always puzzles me. Every year, I feel like fantasy football drafters disrespect Tyler Lockett and always go for the shiny object of DK Metcalf. And now you also have Jackson Smith and Jigba is a part of that offense. Is Lockett the guy you want in that Seattle offense, or do you go with the flashy new toy in JSN or the guy that you know in DK Metcalf?
See, it's funny. I'm with you. I'm not a DK Metcalf guy, and JSN is an absolute prodigy as far as talent, but we just don't know how quickly that's going to translate. And there's another guy named Geno Smith throwing the ball. Is he going to be the Geno Smith we saw last year, or will he take a step back? For my money, I go Lockett. I think Lockett is the guy who week to week consistently gets the ball. If you take out week 15 and 17, he ended the year last 5-6 weeks with at least 7 targets per game. That's the kind of guy you want. That's not what DK Metcalf did. And let's face it, he went on a run last year where he had 6 games in a row where he scored at least 1 touchdown. So I'll still go Tyler Lockett all day.
Tony Cotillo, our guest here in the Sports Bar. So there was one take, and this is the season of takes, right? Because you can say things, and then not often do you get held accountable for it. But there was a take yesterday that Danger and I heard, like, whoa. When Ryan Clark of ESPN goes on and says, yeah, there's a receiver that's more talented than Justin Jefferson, and his name is George Pickens. Okay, Pickens is good, but are you willing to say he's going to get into that top 10 sort of echelon? Your thoughts on Pickens and that, I guess, that Steeler offense overall, because it could be good if Kenny Pickett actually steps up.
Yeah, and you just hit the golden word there, the golden phrase, Kenny Pickett, right? Listen, you can only go as far as your team, and I love Ryan Clark, and I don't know, maybe he's talking about from a talent perspective, he's going to grow into that kind of guy. I don't know what he's looking at, because when I look at Justin Jefferson, I look at the most polished and the most consistent receiver in the game, who quite possibly could hit 2,000 yards this year. So I don't not even see George Pickens even coming close to that, because of the offense he's in. He is uber talented. I agree. One-handed catches, toe touches, his routes are crisp. But at the end of the day, it's like what you have in Atlanta. I love Drake London. I love Kyle Pitts, but is Desmond Ridder the guy that we're going to be throwing in the ball that I'm going to say, I hope he gets it to him? I mean, this is what you have to look at. So as much as I love Pickens, he's not ready to challenge for that top 10 spot yet. No way.
Hey, let's stay in the AFC North and look at an offense that maybe deserves a little bit more respect on their name. There's some unknowns with Baltimore. Todd Monken is coming in, but we know what his history has looked like. And all reports out of Ravens camp is that the offense is humming. What's your takeaway on the Ravens offense, and which assets should we be targeting?
Yeah, I'll tell you what. I have done about 12 to 13 mock drafts in the past 2 weeks. We do one every Sunday night on the Sirius show from 9 to 11, and we have a lot of fun with it. And a guy that's getting no love for some reason is Odell Beckham Jr. Now, I'll be honest with you. I know everybody wants to talk about the 2 ACLs. They want to talk about the injury history. But listen, this is a veteran guy who doesn't have a lot of tread on his tires over the past 2 years, right? So, or taken off of his tires, I should say. Is the guy that could come in and be that number one weapon that Lamar Jackson needs besides Mark Andrews. And they also drafted a guy in Zay Flowers and a guy last year in Rashad Bateman and a guy in Devin Duvernay who goes deep and opens up the offense. This could be, guys. This could be, and this is going to be a good one for you because it has your territory, but this could be growing into that Buffalo Bills explosive style offense where Odell becomes that Stephon Diggs, Zay Flowers becomes that Gabe Davis, and then you have Bateman and Duvernay that kind of play that Shakir role. So I really think that, if you're targeting somebody, listen, you're getting Odell Beckham Jr. in like the 7th round. He could be a number one wide receiver and get you 85 catches in the 7th round. So that's the guy I'm targeting.
Tony, tonight we get the one game. It's the Eagles and the Browns. And I think the last time we talked about Deshaun Watson, and look, we're all going to be watching Watson. But I'm going to ask you the question from this perspective. And Danger and I, we're in a super flex league. So for everybody not familiar, super flex is where you get to play a second quarterback in the flex. And Tony, I love that because to me it feels more like real football. It puts the importance on the quarterback position. And yeah, you could rattle off who the starting quarterback's top 12 in fantasy, and then you get to who should be your second quarterback. And is it a guy like Watson? Who might be that guy that, if you're in a super flex, you would say, this is a quarterback that's going to get some garbage yards, or this is a quarterback that is young that people don't know about? Who are you high on that at the quarterback position that maybe the rest of everybody is not?
Now, I'll tell you what, I do really, really like Deshaun Watson. I do think it's his reclamation year. Obviously, I know it sounds cliche, but let's remember he was just rusty last year. He came into an offense he wasn't familiar with, and he's got a lot of weapons out there in Cleveland. And for my money, Stefanski's a heck of a head coach when it comes to developing an offensive mindset. So I do like him, but there are a lot of reports out there right now that he's looked kind of flat. Remember, he's been doing joint practicing here in Philadelphia, and the reports I've gotten from a lot of my people and my sources that he hasn't looked very good. Now, I don't know what we take out of that, but if you're a little bit skeptical, you can go down the realm a little bit. And listen, guys, Anthony Richardson is going to be an absolute stud. Yep. Absolute stud. And remember, another guy from Philly and Shane Steichen that really did a heck of a job with Jalen Hurts. Same style of quarterback. He's got to learn his accuracy. He could throw it through the wall, right? He could throw a ball 2 football fields long. It's just about accuracy, just like we see with Fields in Chicago. So I really love Anthony Richardson. And now it looks like it's his team. And, man, the sky's the limit for that kid.
Yeah, Tony, I mean, when he was drafted, I kind of like – a smile came across my face because I remember watching him at Florida and thinking he's raw, but he's going to be something. And then to see him go to a team like Indianapolis and now to hear them actually put that vote of confidence on him and name him the Week 1 starter. My take on Richardson is that this guy could end up having the kind of rookie season that we haven't seen out of a quarterback like him since Cam Newton. And if you were somebody who had Cam Newton in a Superflex league as your QB too, you were winning leagues.
Yes, absolutely. And I just did 2 Superflex mock drafts, and there literally was 12 quarterbacks selected in the first 3 rounds. I mean, and that's what happens, right? Because you get your number 1 guy, and you just hit the nail on the head. That 2015 Cam Newton year was unbelievable. If you had Cam Newton, you were unbeatable. And I really think watching the way Steichen was able to formulate an offense around Jalen Hurts and his strengths and weaknesses here in Philadelphia is the same thing he's going to do out there in Indianapolis. So, to expect 3,500 yards and 20 touchdowns is not a pipe dream at all. And that's just, to me, that's just the low part of what his game could be.
Tony, it feels like it's been a long week because this happened earlier in the week, and the idea that the AFC East got a little bit better at the running back room here. Cook going to the Jets, Ezekiel Elliott going to New England. Where would you put both of those running backs here as we're all kind of updating here our list heading to our draft?
This is so typical Bill Belichick. That's why I never draft a running back from the New England Patriots. I'll tell you guys real fast, back in the day, I drafted Lawrence Maroney. I said, oh, man, this dude's going to go off. And then all of a sudden, the first game he's not even playing because Bill Belichick thinks he's smarter than everybody. So all the Ramondre Stevenson fans, I'm sorry, but I'd be nervous because I'm not saying Ezekiel Elliott's going to be a stud from a fantasy perspective, but, man, is he going to steal some touchdowns. This is like Michael Bush territory. This is Jamal Williams territory. He's going to get that ball at the goal line all the time. Now, Dalvin Cook, different story. I think Dalvin Cook has a real possibility to be a really good asset because he can catch the ball. And you guys know Aaron Rodgers loves throwing to the running back. He made a living out of it out there in Green Bay, especially with Aaron Jones. That's why he got paid. So you have Breece Hall coming back from the ACL injury, coming back slow, and they have Dalvin Cook, who's got a lot left for a team that has Super Bowl aspirations.
Yeah, Tony, I was going to ask you about Breece Hall and what it means for Breece Hall. How do you deal with Breece Hall, knowing he's coming off the ACL, knowing that he's got competition with Cook? I mean, we've seen Breece Hall catch out of the backfield and be that kind of back that they probably want in that offense that Aaron Rodgers likes to throw to, but Cook complicates things here, right?
Yeah, he really does. And to be honest with you, what you just said is why I feel like Hall isn't even close to being that 100% because they went out and got the same style of running back to at least be in that fold until he's ready. And then what you're looking at is if you're in a dynasty league or you're in a deeper kind of league, then you draft the Breece Hall and you don't worry about it. But now he drops down. And this is a guy who was going first couple rounds. I think he's got to drop down now because I think the expectation is a full split when he's healthy. And you still have Michael Carter that they do like in specific roles out there. So they're going to utilize all 3 of those guys. So it does definitely spell trouble for Breece Hall.
Tony Cotillo is our guest. I always like drafting guys from good offenses. And this was a good offense like 5 years ago. Not so much the last few years. But tell me if I'm overreacting to preseason football. Because Sunday afternoon, I'm watching Saints and Chiefs. And I'm like, Carr in New Orleans. Okay, Alvin Kamara's not going to be there the first 3 weeks. He still looks very good. Wow, this looks like an improved offense. Now, is that just preseason and the Chiefs aren't doing anything, or is that a source for some cheap points? What are your thoughts on the Saints entering 2023?
Yeah, you know what? The Saints are one of my most intriguing teams because, number one, I'm really curious to see how Derek Hall really formulates an offense on another team. And I'm looking at guys like Michael Thomas, who, listen, we haven't heard from him for 2 years. Now, all of a sudden, he's getting healthier. Now, all of a sudden, it looks like he's going to play. Kamara, he drops down to that 2-3 game suspension instead of the 6 games he was going to get. So he's still going to be in the fold. He's very explosive. People are overlooking him. So I think this is interesting. It really is. But when you look at it from a preseason perspective, the only thing I look at anymore from preseason is look at offensive plays. And I don't even look at the scheme because the thing is, the one thing they can't change is the plays. They can change the scheme, but they're not changing the play. So you can look at those routes that these guys are running. You can look at kind of the scripted runs that they're doing because they're going to be the same thing, but with different players. But the overall scheme may change and be vanilla, especially when we're talking about Kansas City, because I can tell you what, guys, Andy Reid, I watched him for years here in Philadelphia, and he showed you absolutely zero in the preseason, which is exactly what Doug Peterson does in Jacksonville. So.
What about teams that you want absolutely nothing to do with? You want none of their parts on offense. I mean, like, I look out west, Arizona strikes me as a team like, I don't care who's there. I want no part of that offense. And it's funny. We were just talking about how you have to sell your soul to the devil to win a Super Bowl championship sometimes. The Rams, aside from Cooper Kupp, but even with Cooper Kupp and a Matthew Stafford who looks to be on his last leg, I'm nervous about that offense as well.
Yeah, I'd be very nervous about the Rams. And the one team that you didn't mention is my undraftable talent from teams is going to be San Francisco. And I'll tell you why. You know, the only guy I feel is draftable and that you don't need to worry about is CMC.
Yeah.
I want nothing from Ayuk, nothing from Debo, nothing from George Kittle, because here's the deal. Kyle Shanahan found out how much he can utilize and use CMC last year. And when Shanahan finds out that he can really drill a running back into the ground, that's what he's going to do. Then that means less targets for guys like Debo. That means less plays for guys like Ayuk and more blocking for guys like Kittle. And I'm not sold on the quarterback position either. So I want nothing to do with San Francisco unless I'm getting CMC. So that's the one team, not just because they're in the West, but one team overall that I'm looking to fade.
Ooh, I love that take. Tony, last one for me. And it concerned, again, another overreaction, or maybe it's not. Look, I could have completed that little screen pass to DJ Moore, but then there he goes there, and it has a lot of Bears fans excited. So
he's talking about me.
Yeah, I am, Danger, and every Bears fan.
I know where he's going.
Yeah,
I know where he's going.
Reality versus the value here, Tony, as far as what are you to see Fields and this Bears offense, because they certainly look good over the weekend.
Yeah, they did. And what I will – it's funny you brought that up because I kind of went back and forth with a couple people on the timeline and through YouTube about this, and the people that gave me the same deal. Oh, you love Justin Fields. He threw 2 passes for 2 yards. I said, at the end of the day, when we look at projections and we look at stats at the end of the year, does it say he threw 4 2-yard passes that went for 80? No. It says he threw for 320 yards. So I could care less if it's 2 yards because guess what? I dealt with a quarterback in McNabb that threw worm burners into the ground a lot here in Philadelphia, and he couldn't even get the 2-yard pass completed. So the thing that I look at is DJ Moore is such a relief for what Fields can do because he's going to be able to take it to the house. If you guys remember, I don't know when I was on with you last year or not, we talked about Tua before he got injured. I said the best thing about having guys like Tyreek Hill is Tua had an accuracy problem. What's the best way to solve that? A short passing game and guys that could take it to the house. So why should we get frustrated at that? We should love that because that means Justin Fields is going to throw the ball more this year and he's going to get more yards, even if they're smaller plays that develop into big touchdowns.
And the Bears are winning the Super Bowl based on that one play.
I don't know about that. That's a little far.
So if we're overreacting, indulge me a little bit, Tony. Come on. Tony, it's great having you on with us. Love talking fantasy football as we're hitting peak draft season now. Tell our audience more about where they can get your work here in preparation for their draft.
Yeah, you can go to windowsports.com, whether it be YouTube, whether it be podcast, the website, social media. Always dropping content for fantasy football. And every Sunday night, from 9 to 11 p.m. Eastern on Sirius Fantasy Sports Radio Channel 87. We're doing mock drafts every Sunday. Call-ins for the second hour. It's a lot of fun, so you can come join the party.
Tony, appreciate you. Let's do this again, and good luck drafting. And how many leagues are you in, Tony?
So I cut it back. I'll be honest with you. I used to be in 4, and I thought, and again, that was too many for me. So I cut it back to 2, but I do 2 best ball leagues as well. So that's, set it and forget it. So I kind of, that helps me because I'm so busy throughout the year. At least I just have to prepare for the draft and just watch the team play.
Love it. Tony, appreciate the time, bud. Let's do it again soon.
Sounds good. Have a great day, fellas.
Tony Cotillo. You can hear him on Fantasy Sports Radio, Win Daily Sports. Great stuff there as you're preparing for your fantasy football draft.
So he wears a replica championship ring of the Eagles. Where's your 85 replica ring, Danger?
I don't have one.
Oh.
I somewhere buried deep in my storage. I know I have a VHS tape of the Super Bowl Shuffle. What am I doing with that? Can I do anything with that?
Same thing. I have a Super Bowl 25. Never
on
watched
VHS.
It. On VHS.
Yeah, you can't go back and watch that now, can you? I could dig that up, blow the dust off of it, try to find something to play it on, and or I could just dig it up on YouTube, I suppose. We'll get to appetizers next in the sports bar. A little NFL whip around. We'll get to some of the news and notes that we haven't talked about yet.
Yeah, and something about Josh Allen I found interesting. Josh Allen said, "Nope, we're not talking about this."
No,
I'll explain.
All right, we'll get to that and more next. If it's time for NFL appetizers in the sports bar, Danger and Battaglia on the Fan Rochester.
Odyssey has sports for every fan. Keep up with your
With Danger and Battaglia on the Sports Leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950 The Fan, Rochester.
All right, so we learned today that it will indeed be Josh Allen and the Bills starters playing for about a quarter and a half, according to Bills head coach Sean McDermott. It's time for NFL appetizers here in the sports bar. We'll whoop around the NFL.
That's the evergreen topic, right? Well, how long should they play?
Right.
All right, yes, we could debate that, but this is what McDermott likes to do, and this is going to be the plan. There is like one Josh Allen note, and it's not really anything that is football related, but John Wara of the Associated Press has a story out, and it's just about basically what it's like to be Josh Allen and dealing with fame. Well, Allen did the interview on one condition. This is right from the article. He made one simple request, asking not to publish the name of the actress he's been linked to recently.
Wait, Josh Allen's been linked to an actress? What? When did that happen? You're kidding me. Josh Allen's dating a Hollywood starlet?
Are we growing up as a city here? Because usually we go goo-goo about like, oh my gosh, here's a celebrity, and nowhere once did we have like Josh's girlfriend. Oh, this is the song? Oh, this is her.
But we can't mention her name at the request of QB1.
You know just what to say. Things that scare me, I should just
It's a little catchy.
away. But I can't move my feet. The more that I know you, the more I want
Does he?
to.
I mean, he's becoming an alien right before our very eyes. Detached. Like, we all know. Why can't he mention her in the article? I don't understand that.
He needs to keep his focus on football. Let's not go down that road of who I'm dating.
Then don't do the article.
Then don't do the
Don't
interview.
do the interview.
Don't do the interview,
All right.
yeah.
Keep your focus on football. Fine. We'll be fine. If the AP doesn't get their Josh Allen interview, then you can focus on football. Don't treat us like we're dumb. We know who he's with.
Also, have we grown up as a city? No. If I'm reading stories days later about, oh my gosh, Jennifer Garner was in Canandaigua, did you see?
We are very celebrity starved.
I know.
We have no ability to act like we've been there before. None. Have to just throw ourselves at any celebrity all the time in this town. It's not it shouldn't be as big a deal as it is. But, all right. So Allen gave the interview. There's a piece on the AP.
But if it's a story about what it's like to be Josh Allen, deal with fame, you're leaving out this whole thing that you're dating somebody
that attracts paparazzi.
Is she like, help me out here? Because it's a little. I've heard that song. As soon as you play, I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Is her fame equal to Josh Allen, or is it a little step behind? I think my perspective is like he's helping her a little.
Depends on her. Depends on your circles, I suppose. She was in the Pitch Perfect series, so if you have teenage daughters, they certainly know who she is. She had that song, which was a pretty big hit for her. So again, teenage daughters probably know who she is. She's the voice of Gwen in the Spider-Man Spider-Verse animated movie series. So there's a notch. Like, it depends what circles you run in.
All right, so
like there are people that probably are really, really into Spider-Man and really love the work that she did for that franchise and that series that don't watch football or know who Josh Allen is. Have no idea.
She didn't come to Rochester.
She's not one of us yet. When she does come to Rochester, we will claim her as our own, as we like to do with any celebrity that aligns themselves with our fair city. Hey, while the Bills are going to be starting their starters here for about a quarter and a half, it looks like the Steelers are going to do the same kind of thing, as Mike Tomlin acknowledging that quarterback Kenny Pickett and the starting offense will play more than one series. That was one series that they got in Week 1 against the Bucs, and Pickett finished that preseason opener 6 of 7 for 70 yards, capping it with a 33-yard touchdown to George Pickens, a 10-play drive. We'll see more of Kenny Pickett and the Steelers starters against the Bills on Saturday evening.
Our number, 866-4326, 866-4FAN. Tom in Rochester. What's going on, Tom?
Hey, Tom.
Hey, guys, love the show. Listen, the actress who shall not be named, her best role had to have been in the remake of True Grit with Jeff Bridges. She was great as the young girl looking for avenge her father's killing. She was really good in that.
I'm going to add it to the list.
Add it to the list.
There
the
is
actress
no
who shall
list.
not be named.
Yeah, the actress who shall not be named. That's good, Tom. Appreciate the heads up on that. I'm not really actively looking for her work. I mean, like, it's kind of there, and I think when she was in Hawkeye, the Marvel series on Disney Plus, she had a big role in that. Like, if you're a comic book fan and you think that her work in that series or in Spider-Man is fantastic, then you're a fan of hers. You probably don't even know who Josh Allen is because you're probably not into football. Well, maybe you are. I don't know.
Well, for Josh Allen, like, he went on a vacation with this actress that we cannot name, and all of a sudden the paparazzi catches them being, kissy faced there.
I don't like the actress who shall not be named. Who are we talking about here? Voldemort? No, it's Haley Steinfeld. It's Haley Steinfeld.
Yes, we could say that, but don't say it.
We could say it. He just doesn't want to say it himself for whatever reason. Kind of weird. Do you think he has to explain that to her, or do you think that's at her request?
No, I think that the latter is part true, and also I think Josh has enough self-awareness to know that when he comments publicly for the first time on the girl he's dating, then it's a big story. And then anybody's going to ask about it. And like, no, we're not going to talk about that. And then look at the bad day for the Bills. He's not paying attention to football. I
just see an off-season elope happening here. We're going to see Josh Allen with the world's smallest handcuff on his left hand at training camp next year.
Or is she going to be like Janet Jones? Like Josh in Buffalo? You know what? I don't want to go to Edmonton. You come down here.
No, don't even put that on the Buffalo Bills, Gino, because the Rams could use a new quarterback at some point. Oh, God. Big scare with the Dolphins today. Teron Armstead was carted off the field. Leg injury. Now, he kind of was playing with Tyreek Hill as they were coming up saying that he was okay. Really, more than anything, he's just old. 32 years old. And it sounds like he should be good to go for the start of the regular season.
I didn't know. Is that an injury designation? Like Terrell Bernard, hamstring. Teron Armstead,
old. Just old. Need a day.
Bengals running back Joe Mixon acquitted of aggravated menacing charges in Cincinnati today. Mixon was accused of pulling a gun during a road rage incident back in January. That happened like right before the playoff game, I want to say. Regardless, he's no problem now. The judge found him not guilty after a 4-day trial. Mixon did not testify, and his lawyers did not call any witnesses, arguing the prosecution proved his case. If Mixon had been convicted, he could have faced up to 180 days in jail.
He's a bad guy. It's such a hard thing. Like we were just talking fantasy with Tony Cotillo. If you draft Joe Mixon, you do it because you're like, oh, you're trying to win your fantasy league, but at the same time, it doesn't taste. It's like spinach. It's good for you, but it doesn't taste good. I don't really want it.
Yeah, there's some video that he'll regret the rest of his life.
He's a bad guy. He's just a bad guy. Got off on this one, though. Good lawyers, I suppose. Happy hour is upon us here in the sports bar. I'm still laughing. She who shall not be named. Are we going to play that for the rest of the season? Maybe if the second he has a bad game, she who shall not be named will be to blame.
Well, if they're really dating, wouldn't she come up here at some point, or is she just sneaking in and out of town?
I don't know, man. I don't know. Or
is this tabled until?
Or is it not a thing anymore? Because there was a lot of smoke during the off season, but now it's time for football season. Babe, you're going to have to wait till at least the end of February for me. Middle of February at the earliest, okay? Just sit over here. I got to focus on... If that's what's actually happening, if that's why he doesn't want her name mentioned, now I'm into it. But otherwise, it's kind of weird.
Unless he's keeping his options open.
Josh Allen, master swordsman? Possibly. Keeping his options open. I think he's always kept his options open. I think that's a lot of NFL players, I think, always view their options as completely open. Professional athletes as a whole.
I talk professionally.
That's
what I'm talking about. Don't we all keep our professional options?
Correct.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to happy hour next in the sports bar. We've got a round of shots. We have time for your calls if you'd like to join us. It's 866-4326, the Good Smoke Barbecue and Pub Wingman line. 866-4FAN, award-winning barbecue from Good Smoke Barbecue and Pub. The new location at 135 West Commercial Street in East Rochester, goodsmokebbq.com.
Look at
Sports leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950. The Fan, Rochester.
Always live on the free Odyssey app.
The Fan Rochester Sports Update.
Feels like Coach Sean McDermott saying today that Josh Allen and the rest of his starters will see about a quarter and a half coming up Saturday night. And the Bills play their second preseason game in Pittsburgh. Once again from today, Terrell Bernard, middle linebacker, did not practice, still dealing with that soft tissue injury. 4 p.m. our coverage will begin Saturday afternoon. And the kickoff 6:30 here on the Fan Rochester. Tonight, it's week 2 of the preseason. Actually, it's the third game for the Browns as they take on the Philadelphia Eagles in the lone NFL game. Rochester Red Wings in Buffalo tonight. Boston and Washington on the Major League scoreboard tied at 1 in the fourth. The Yankees, they're under 500. They're off tonight. They host Boston this coming weekend. One other game in progress. Actually, just one final. The Mariners coming from 4 runs down to beat the Royals 6-4. Gene Battaglia, the sports leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950. The Fan, Rochester.
Or on the rocks, it's the Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia on the sports leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950 The Fan, Rochester.
Hurry back, DeLorean. Hurry back, buddy.
What, everything just kind of freeze up there?
Yeah, well, you know, your friendly neighborhood host is running the console with his feet again. I apologize for that.
You're thinking about fantasy football.
I have a lot of distractions.
Yeah,
in my
a lot
life.
of distractions.
A lot of distractions in my life. But sports, talking sports in the Flower City, it's my favorite distraction, Gino. Silly audience. Segways are for kids. Welcome into the Sports Bar. It's Danger and Battaglia. Happy hour is upon us. Love it if you join us at 585-866-4FAN. We appreciate you joining us on our stream at YouTube and Twitch at The Fan Rochester. We sound our best in the free-to-download Odyssey app. Search out the Sports Bar, and all of our guest appearances are listed for you there. If you're a podcast listener, you'll find us wherever you get your shows. Chris tweeting us, the site formerly known as Twitter. Get this guy to say Joe Flacco on the air with that accent. Oh, he's talking about Tony Cotillo. He's a Philadelphia guy.
Yeah,
but there are some Philadelphia people that have that accent as well. It's kind of like a northeastern accent. Some parts of the Northeast have it, and certainly it's prevalent there in the Baltimore and D.C. area.
Yeah, or we call him our fantasy Goomba. Tony Cotillo.
It's me, Tony Cotillo. Check out my giant Philadelphia replica Super Bowl ring.
Like, if the Bears ever won again, would you buy a ring? Like, if the Sabres won the Stanley Cup, would I come in and be like, yeah?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
We used to work with somebody who would do PA for the Red Wings. And when they won the Governor's Cup in, what year was it, 97? He got a ring. And he wore that thing.
I never got my ring. So
Did you do the same thing?
Well, not the Red Wings. No. Remember the Razor Sharks?
Oh, of course.
Yeah. So, listen, the owner's since passed, so I've got to kind of make sure I'm respectful here and everything. But did the play-by-play, and like everyone got a ring. And Roosevelt, Bowie, and I were doing the games on Channel 26 back then on Time Warner.
Wow.
To the fact that the guy doing the radio down in Florida gets a ring. We're like, wait a second. He gets a ring and he's just showing up for talking every once in a while. Oh, I see how this works. So, yeah.
Well, I don't know that you're missing anything because we kind of pointed and laughed at the guy who was wearing the ring even though he didn't play on the team.
Right. So now I look at him like, who cares? Now?
Right.
Yeah.
It's like it's akin to being the guy that wears your class ring after you graduate high school. Like back in the day when you got those. Do they even do those anymore, class rings? I don't even know. Does Jostens still show up at high schools looking to give up, get your hard earned to buy a memento from your graduating class, a class ring?
I don't even know what happened to my class ring. Like
I didn't buy one. I didn't have one.
I was like, my folks are like, you're getting one. I'm like, I don't really need to know. And like,
oh wow! So somewhere in the archives you have a class ring.
I
somewhere.
have, yeah. Good old Aquinas.
Got to dig that up. No, like my kid was so against all of it. Like she wanted nothing to do with any of that graduation stuff. I didn't have a class ring. And I know that there were people that I grew up with that wore that thing proudly far past the graduation. It's like, what? Why are you wearing it? What's going on? Crazy. Hey, we had practice today in Orchard Park. Bills' final practice before week 2 of the preseason. Saturday night, you'll be able to hear the game against the Steelers here on the Fan Rochester. Kickoff at 6:30. It's been kind of the story here since week 1 of the preseason, the kind of emergence at wide receiver of Andy Isabella, somebody that the Bills just kind of plucked right at the beginning of camp, who's out there and giving him a shot. I mean, you hear him talk and you think to yourself, all right, I have so many questions, but it's when you hear him speak and you see his action on the field, you kind of get the sense, oh, this is a guy that McDermott must love.
You come in here and you set a standard for yourself. I set a high standard for myself, and I kind of try to carry that standard with me every day, whether it's staying after and studying more the plays. When I go out there, I know what I'm doing, and I bring a lot of energy and play hard. And I think when you do that, the ball finds energy, and the ball finds people that work hard and do the right thing. So
smash cut to Sean McDermott.
I see myself in this young man who is working very hard because, like, I went to a 1AA school and he's a subdivision guy.
Underdog. He's the underdog story that you want to see achieve greatness.
Can somebody answer this question? What happened to Andy Isabella in Arizona? To the fact that, hey, second round pick, and then you're number 2, not active half the season. You're number 3, off the team, on the practice squad in Baltimore, meaning any team could have grabbed them at all, and they didn't, including Buffalo last year. And Buffalo needed a lot of things at wide receiver. So what was it in his game, year 1 to year 2, and how do we get to this point? Like, they're not putting Andy Isabella out there, Danger, if he's not going to be a part of this team in some way. And I think he's definitely on this practice squad. I think Bills fans would nod that, yes, as an understudy or maybe situationally, but carrying 7 wide receivers is not a luxury this team can afford.
If you're Sean McDermott, what you love about this guy being in camp is at minimum, he pushes Khalil Shakir. At minimum. McDermott spoke on it today.
Can you carry your confidence through the course of a season? That's a trait, that's a mental skill. And I think, Khalil is one of our more confident players, and we're confident in him, and I know Josh is as well. And I don't see that becoming an issue for him, but it is something that is a challenge for performers, especially in this type of environment.
We'll see the starters for over a quarter on Saturday. So you're going to watch, you're going to pay attention, you're going to see who's out there with those starters. And man, I would be shocked if you didn't see all of these guys getting some looks in that, just at least being on the field. I'm talking Hardy, Sherfield, maybe even Isabella with the first team. We've heard that Isabella was catching passes from Josh Allen in practice.
We saw the video of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was new, something we did not see. And he only showed up. The Bills training camp had already started.
That's right.
How did we go again from the Baltimore Ravens, who are putting together this really nice offense, they decided, yeah, you know what, we're not bringing you to camp. Like, you're not number 91 here in our camp. But now all of a sudden the Bills fan base is like, yes, Andy Isabella, yeah, he's not making this team. I'm going to stand by that take. He's not making this team because you cannot afford that. And who has more upside in their career at this point? If you say Khalil Shakir, like, expose and put in waivers, you could be looking at Hodgins 2.0. That was poor management last year, bouncing Isaiah Hodgins. I'd say Isaiah Hodgins right now, I put him ahead of Shakir, so you don't want that to happen.
I hear what you're saying, and there's a lot of people that would say, well, you needed a receiver like Hodgins down the back stretch when you brought in John Brown, when you brought in Cole Beasley, and I just think the Bills and Brandon Beane look at players differently than that. They don't just say this is a player that plays this position. They look at what is his skill set and what do we actually need. Oh, we need a slot guy because Isaiah McKenzie isn't working out. Bring in Cole Beasley. Oh, we need a speed guy because we don't really have that. Bring back John Brown, right? Like Isabella, Hardy, these are a couple of speed guys that if one goes down, if Hardy goes down, Isabella can step right into that role. Not necessarily because he's a wide receiver, just because he's a speed guy.
Right, and the idea that, well, if you put him through waivers, somebody's going to pluck up Andy Isabella again. No, they won't. They didn't last year. Why would they do it this year? So I think that you can get Isabella safely
unless
into the practice
teams are
squad.
Looking for that specific skill, not necessarily the player, just the skill, not necessarily somebody to fill a role, but can he fill the right role? Like if other teams do what the Bills do, and I would imagine a lot of them do, they're not really concerned with what the player's history is. What is this player's skill set, and how can we use him in a pinch when we need him? Then we go get him. Deontay Hardy had a nice practice today as well. A couple of impressive plays during 11-on-11 red zone work. With Kyle Allen, and then there was also a couple of plays made, and I shudder to say this, a couple of plays made at linebacker by A.J. Klein. A.J. Klein against Matt Barkley, but A.J. Klein is going to have something to say as we kind of wonder, all right, who's middle linebacker going to be? Is it going to be Dotson? Because the same Dotson that's roughing up people in practice and starting skirmishes and
overcommitting on a simple screen pass. Like when we talked to Nate Geary on Monday, he predicted it would be Klein. We're like, oh, come on.
He said, don't give up on Klein.
Yeah.
You have Dotson, who's out there. Bernard has been out with that hamstring injury. And you also had today missing from practice Balen Spector. So, yeah, I would expect that you're going to see a lot of A.J. Klein, given that these guys didn't practice today. You're going to see a lot of A.J. Klein come Saturday night with Tyrell Dodson on the field as well. So that's it. That's their last practice until Saturday's Week 2 preseason matchup against the Pittsburgh Steelers.
So we have just one game tonight. And what's nice about this now, I love it. Thursday night football, Friday night football, Saturday, Sunday. We have a Monday night game. So, yes, again, it's preseason. You do something else. You do some work around the house. It's on in the background, but you'll be watching tonight. Browns and Eagles. And when we talk about Tony Cotillo, he had an interesting take, by the way, about the Eagles. He said, no, it's not going to be A.J. Brown. It's going to be Devonta Smith that's going to be the leading receiver for Philadelphia. Huh, that's interesting. All right, now we're just, watching tonight. Is this the quarterback, Mike Danger, that was in Houston putting up all those numbers, or is this the guy that is washed and we're all going to be pointing at this contract and saying this is the worst of all time?
Well, we're not. I don't think we're seeing him tonight. I think tonight the start goes to I think tonight the start actually goes to Dorian Thompson-Robinson. So, who's, by the way, fun. That's a fun player. If you watched any of the Hall of Fame game, if you stuck with it, I'm a degenerate who did. You saw him out there and you're like, whoa, this kid can play. In Cleveland, I'm sure that they're trying to figure out why he isn't the second string quarterback behind Deshaun Watson. But I think he's getting the reps today. And Cleveland's preseason schedule's out of whack because of that Hall of Fame game. So they may have already, when they get Watson out there, maybe it's next week. I'm not sure. But Josh Dobbs isn't going to be on the field for Cleveland either. So it's going to be DTR and Kellen Mond tonight for the Cleveland Browns at quarterback. We had Spencer German from our Odyssey Sports sister station, 92.3 The Fan in Cleveland. Rochester's own Spencer German, by the way. And he said that's kind of a tell that they just want to get through the preseason here. DTR starting tonight with Kellen Mond backing him up. Kellen Mond is trash. Just terrible. I don't know. If you're a Browns fan and you heard that conversation from earlier, are you feeling good about going into this season with just Nick Chubb? And will you get more out of Jerome Ford? What about the wide receivers? Elijah Moore, big question mark, right?
Right. Peoples-Jones shows you a little bit every year, but he's not going to be somebody that, I want him on my fantasy team. I think, though, and we say this quite often, when you play teams really matters in the NFL. It really does. And the fact the Browns open against the Bengals, now, okay, do we expect Joe Burrow back week 1? Yeah, I do. What happened last year when Joe Burrow returned week 1? They lost at home to Pittsburgh. Not that that's the worst loss in the league, but if the Browns are going to be that's an attainable game for this team. That's an interesting game. Isn't it fun, like, not having to deal with the Bills on that opening Sunday for a second straight year? You just watch whatever you want to on that opening week.
Rifle off the first 4 opponents for the Miami Dolphins again.
See if I can do this off the top of my head. They play against the Chargers
week
at
1.
SoFi.
Uh-huh.
And then they go to New England.
Uh-huh.
And then they're home against Mr. Unlimited.
Denver.
And then they are in Buffalo.
I said it earlier. If you don't mind, a little bit of space here. I'm going to go ahead and repeat myself just for the people in the back that maybe didn't hear it. I believe the Miami Dolphins are set up to be the most disappointing team in the league. The Miami Dolphins, last in the AFC East, 6, maybe 7 wins.
You are doing your bold takes here early, buddy.
We'll add this to the list.
All right.
I'm just, I'm really thinking and kind of looking at things and trying to be critical of every situation. We've always kind of believed what we believe about Tua, right? Last year, Tua got off to a really, really nice start. And to the Dolphins' credit, they got Tyreek Hill. They have Jalen Waddle. They have guys that when you get the ball in their hands, their speed, they can make plays. You're not asking the quarterback to make real challenging throws because he can't make real challenging throws. Right now, I would say out of all NFL starters, Tua probably has the weakest arm in the league. A joke. I think he's like East Coast Jimmy Garoppolo. I think that's what he brings to the table, and not much less.
Well, I want to just push back a little bit, but then I have to remind you and everybody else, let's go back over a year ago. It's Halloween Day. The Dolphins are playing the Buffalo Bills, and there's Tua Tagovailoa at the podium having to answer questions about not even the rumors, the reports that the Texans are looking to trade for him and the Dolphins going for Deshaun Watson. And that would have happened had just Watson settled. He didn't. And so that never happened. Okay, we move on. Everything's nice. Kiss up, make up. No. You forget that Tom Brady was actually going to be the plan last year? Old Tom Brady was going to be a Miami. So don't tell me, Dolphin fan, that Tua is the man. And Tua is just as good as Josh Allen. It's just not true.
Here's what we forget, because all we want to talk about with Tua is the concussions. I haven't even brought up the injury concerns, right? Because the concussions became the story around Tua. The games that he missed were against top 10 defenses in points allowed per drive. And so the starts that he had, they were against less than challenging defenses. The way the season ended for Tua last year before the concussion, he ended the season with 4 losses. He completed just barely 50% of his passes. Tua wasn't good at the end of last season. Why? Why is that? Because defenses can figure that offense out. The more you do it. Look, early in the season, we were all kind of looking at Mike McDaniel's offense like, oh, look at him. Motion here. Guys, guards are pulling. You're getting the ball out of your hand quick, decisive, accurate to your playmakers. Big plays. Tua can't make all the throws. That's why they were in the market for Deshaun Watson. That's why they were in the market for Tom Brady. And when you're a defense and you start to play a little press man and you leave yourself vulnerable to those deeper throws on the outside, those are the throws Tua's weak arm can't make. Defensively, yeah, you've got Vic Fangio, but that's gonna take some time. There's some growing pains that'll be there with that defense, and you're without Jalen Ramsey now until December. I'd argue that their tight ends room got worse in the offseason. Their receiving room, Sherfield's gone, they got worse this offseason. 6, maybe 7 wins for the Miami Dolphins.
Boy, I wouldn't put him that low.
Last place in the AFC East.
But you start out 1-3, and
somebody has to finish in last place.
It's beyond Tua too. I mean, the idea that coaching staff ruined him last year in the respect that he's clearly concussed. We all saw it, and you're going to put out a back injury, sure. Like the NFLPA should have been screaming murder on that. They really should have.
Yeah. Look, I know everybody's looking forward to week 1. I still want to see preseason football. Like I'm excited for tonight. I'm excited to watch tonight's game. I'm excited for Saturday night. I'm excited to see the starters out there for a little bit. We could have the debate.
You're a little out there on this.
I know,
stuff.
but we could have the debate. Well, I don't know, man. Maybe I just love watching football. Like maybe that just, like I know that we want to see real football, and this isn't real football because you're talking about guys that are going to be looking for work in a couple of weeks, and it's sloppy and it's not as crisp as what we see during the regular season. But I don't know. I'm excited for it. I'm geeking out for it.
Well, look, this time next week, I'm geeking out about week 0. I'm not a fan of Notre Dame football, but I'm going to be watching.
Sure will.
In Dublin, that's Yeah, that'd be excited to see some real football.
Yeah. And we could have the annual debate of how much or how little a team should play their starters. But this is the way McDermott now, we've got enough data on McDermott. We've connected enough dots to know this is how he operates. And, I would imagine moving forward that week 2 will always be kind of like that dress rehearsal, what week 3 used to be in the preseason for the Buffalo Bills, that you'll see some of the starters a little bit longer.
Also, too, it matters who you're coaching against. So, for instance, I think Sean McDermott, has some comfort in knowing that Mike Tomlin is not going to goon out his Steelers team against Josh Allen because they're rivals. Which brings me to this other sidebar story today.
This is weird.
It's very weird. Draw your own conclusions here. But so yesterday, the Jets and Bucks, boy, they had one of those joint practices that got really, really chippy. 4 big skirmishes, had to be broken up. The Jets, by one report from Rich Zamini, too, their offensive line, horrible yesterday. Horrible. 6 sacks in 10 snaps for Aaron Rodgers. Not good at all.
Yeah, and now you have Todd Bowles and the Bucks today looking for a place to practice because Robert Saleh basically called off the joint practice. These two teams will meet this weekend in the preseason, but I don't know that I ever heard of a joint practice being canceled for anything other than inclement weather. This sounds almost as if to say, yeah, things got a little out of hand. Let's not do that again.
Yeah, you left you have to do this as a business, though, and the Buccaneers are left hanging today. So what did the Buccaneers end up doing? The Giants brought him in. So there's a picture of this grass field outside the Giants practice facility, and basically it looks like a team showing up off the bus here and just having a practice, and that's what the Buccaneers had to do today in the tri-state area.
No, it's good news for the Bucs. Grit. Tom Brady could never do that. That's just, they're going to have a little bit more grit than everybody else this year because they practiced on a high school field or wherever they were practicing outside of the Giants facility.
You are always welcome to pull up a stool and join us at 866-4FAN, 866-4326. Brad in Rochester. What's going on, Brad?
Hey, as you guys talk about Miami, I have a buddy of mine at work who's a Miami fan, and his biggest whine and complaint is that they haven't addressed the offensive line.
Right.
And that's the biggest thing that's going to happen to them is that Armstead's already going down, and their tackles are horrible. And if Tua can't make it through a season, they're done. And I totally agree, 7 wins.
Yeah, I actually think, even if Tua does make it through the season, I don't think they're going to win those games. Tua was terrible last year down the stretch. Nobody wants to talk about how badly he played and how they lost 4 games down the stretch. They got off to a real hot start. Teams figured them out. Tua can't make all the throws. Even when he's in there, they're not good.
Right. I mean, they barely beat the Bills when we had how many backups?
Yeah.
One goal.
Brad, thanks. That being said, they nearly beat Buffalo.
No. Hey, look, the Bills aren't a perfect product either. We could spend hours on hours talking about how middle linebacker, this was not the plan. This could not have been the plan. I refuse to believe that Terrell Dodson was the plan for the Buffalo Bills, a middle linebacker with Edmonds leaving. Something blew up in their face. Something didn't go as planned. So there are... Hey, I think all of these teams you could point and find warts on every team in the AFC East. Mm-hmm. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. It's not going to be easy for any team to rise up and to claim that AFC East crown or to take it away from the Bills. We got to get to a round of shots next in the sports bar.
Yeah, so we will set you up for baseball here tonight. You put in perspective here what's going on with the Yankees. Oh, there's a corrupt owner in Major League Baseball. Well, actually, he's not the one that went to jail. It's
shocking.
It's the mayor of the town that he cut a deal with that pled guilty today. Well, that's interesting. Yes, because we just pass along facts. We'll just pass along when latest on Wander Franco, what is being reported this afternoon. And also something that's coming up at the Blue Cross Arena. I'm sure is going to have some fans excited for this team locally.
Quick break here. Come back with a round of shots next. We have last call coming up as well. You can pull up a stool and join us at 866-4326. 585-866-4FAN. The Fan, Rochester.
Odyssey has sports for every fan. Keep up with your favorite teams from across the
The Fan Rochester Sports Update.
Bills head coach Sean McDermott said that Josh Allen and the starters will see about a quarter and a half coming up Saturday night. And the Bills play in Pittsburgh. Terrell Bernard, once again, not practicing today, the linebacker dealing with that soft tissue injury. We'll have the coverage Saturday afternoon beginning at 4, kickoff at 6:30 here on the Sports Leader. Tonight, week 2 of the preseason continues. Browns and Eagles. Rochester Red Wings tonight in Buffalo. On the Major League scoreboard, the Red Sox trailing the Nationals 3-1. They're in the 5th. One final, the Mariners come from 4 runs down to beat the Royals 6-4. Sports is brought to you by GetMyPerks.com. Today